we'll start this meeting. If you could all please rise for the invocation. Pastor Jeff Chitwood with Anchor Christian Church will lead us in prayer this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. Let's pray. Dear God, we come to you today and we give you thanks for another beautiful day of life that you blessed us with. And we pray, Lord, that you will watch over us and guide us as a city. We thank you for this place that so many people give of their time and efforts and wisdom to guide and lead. Be at the council members this morning, give them wisdom and just guide and direct them in all the decisions they make. And thank you for this nation, for those who serve to protect us, and we pray that you will watch over and protect them. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Councilwoman Carumba, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba. Here. Councilman DeWitt.
Here.
Councilwoman Carr.
Here.
Mayor Simmons.
Here.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Here.
Councilman Forbes.
Here. Good morning, everybody. We have a nice crowd this morning. That's nice to see. We're going to start with public comment on agenda items. Members of the public that would like to speak, please come forward at this time. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Hello all, my name is Jude Richvale from Old Bonita. I attended the stormwater workshop last night at the Bonita Grande Fire Station. What it really was a slick sales pitch with a few questions allowed at the end. The pitch was to have a steady funding source for stormwater management rather than the haphazard financing we now have. The proposed funding source is a new fee on Bonita taxpayers. I think this is barking up the wrong tree. The Stantec Group admits that their stormwater utility will not solve the kind of severe flooding we experience here from time to time. So a stormwater utility fee will simply finance more of the same status quo, periodic flooding. Also, the stormwater, at best, will be diverted to tidal basins and be wasted. Water is a diminishing and precious resource in South Florida. What we need is a green integrated water management and distribution system that combines stormwater management with water conservation. This would mean digging ASR, or deep storage wells, at low points to both control flooding and to store summer stormwater for use in winter irrigation. It would mean studying GIS maps to figure out how to channel stormwater to these deep storage wells and away from flood zones. I, Jude Richvale, I'm a GIS expert with experience in the field since 1991. I have served as a senior consultant for 4 major utilities. I can certainly help with such a project. Ed Fitzgerald, retired fire chief of Midtown Manhattan, is an expert on hydraulics and water pressure, and he can certainly help. BSU is sitting on about $200 million. They have the ability to integrate stormwater management with sewer and reclaimed irrigation water distribution. The city of Naples is doing this successfully. There, people pay 69 cents per 1,000 gallons of irrigation water. Here, most people served by BSU pay $7.36 per 1,000 gallons. However, as long as BSU maintains its illegal agreement with RCS, we will not have cheap irrigation water, and we will have periodic flooding. As long as BSU cheats in their board elections, we won't have the kind of leadership at BSU.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. This is city matters, public agenda, what's on the agenda. So I would ask to limit comments to that.
I am. It's about stormwater management.
Okay, let's stick to the issue and maybe save some commentary. How's that?
I just have a couple of sentences to finish.
Okay, great.
Okay. As long as BSU cheats in their board elections, we won't have the kind of leadership at BSU to serve the broader interests of the people in an integrated system. As I speak, BSU folks are mailing ballots with some fake demeaning profiles to that.
There again, we're sticking to the issue at hand. We're not offering political commentary. Please wrap up.
Just one more sentence. With some fake demeaning profiles so that opposition candidates will not be elected. The honest profiles are at edandjude for BSU.org. We need new blood at BSU. Thank you all very much for your time. Thank you.
I have to make a comment. I really am disappointed in your commentary when you were asked not to make a political statement several times, and you continued. So please refrain.
yeah.
That's my opinion. I don't want a dialogue. And I mean, we let you speak, but I don't appreciate that disrespect for what was asked of you by the council.
No response from me?
No.
Thank you very much.
And I want to welcome, on a lighter note and a brighter note and a happy note, there's students here from the Discovery Day Academy here to observe, and they're from the 6th and 7th grade. Could you students please stand to be recognized, please? Thanks for being with us. Thank you very, very much for being here. You get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, so welcome. Yes, sir. Hey, good morning. Welcome.
Morning, Mr. Mayor. My name is Dave Schellenberger. I've been a resident of the city for about 20 years. I'm here this morning to speak against the rescheduling of city elections to a different date to be coincident with national and state elections. I came here in 1999, about the time the city charter was approved. That charter, I thought, was a great framework for the operation of a city at low cost, high efficiency, and great transparency. Living here for 20 years, I think I've watched that happen. I think the city has achieved the goals of those who wrote the charter. My concern about rescheduling the elections is really simple. Having been a resident here for a long time and voted in state elections with constitutional amendments that make your head spin, to add the city issues into those very crowded ballots, to me reduces transparency, reduces the awareness of city residents to issues, and diminishes the transparency that the city has delivered to its residents since the charter was formed, since the charter was adopted. By changing those dates, for whatever reason, various council members think that's a good idea. I think that the majority vote of this council, regardless of how many it is, I think maybe 4, are contravening and going against the wishes of the city residents who approved this charter in 1999. The charter served us well, that we should keep the charter the way it is. We should keep city elections in the spring. I know that the objection is the amount of the turnout we get. And I think if it's a low turnout, the council should be proud of the fact that they've diminished controversy and run the city to the benefit of the residents and with the support of the residents. But when there are issues that require attention, to try to get our residents to focus on those issues in the midst of hundreds of millions and billions of dollars of advertising and national and state initiatives, we're not going to get any attention. City issues will lose the attention of the local residents. Voters will be so overwhelmed by the issues of national and state elections that our local issues will not get the attention they deserve. And therefore, to me, a vote in favor of changing the calendar of elections for the city is a vote against transparency. It's a vote against the original intent of the charter, and it certainly is not in the best interest of the residents. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here this morning. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome.
My name's Gerald Butler. Thank you for your time. I would like to give you my opinion as to the proposed tax for stormwater. I have no objection to paying extra taxes, but I'd like to know that the property that I and my neighbors own are in the loop. I'm actually a marine biologist and a commercial fisherman. My wife and I have owned a house at 9899 Pennsylvania since 2005. My uncle owned the property for 20 years before that, so I've had a lot of chance to observe the changes in our canal over the years. It's a public waterway, and we have over 100 feet of frontage. Our canal ends at Pennsylvania and is the point source for the stormwater sewer from our neighborhood to be dumped into our waterways. Soon after we purchased the property, the city began cleaning out the ditches and drain pipes along Michigan and beyond. This coincided with a significant rainy period. The result was a 2 to 3 foot sandbar in front of our house.
This work has continued over the years and has accelerated during the past few months. The city has no type of containment to catch the sand and mud flowing into the canal and has not even put up a turbidity barrier. As a result, we now have a tremendous sandbar that stretches over 100 feet down our canal. This prevents three homeowners from having direct access to the Gulf of Mexico. It also causes a very real adverse effect on property values, property rights, and property taxes. Our home is taxed as if we have direct access, and we can't even get a rowboat in and out at times. I have complained to city officials over the years, have yet to have anyone really take a look at the situation. We've requested the city, who caused the problem, dredge our canal back to its historic depth. Our canal is part of the city's storm drain system and should be maintained accordingly, just as they maintain culverts, ditches, and underground pipes. The city has come up with excuses for their failure to do so. Commonly, and I quote, "The canal is under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers and we can't get a permit to dredge." In reality, one of my neighbors, a fellow named Bill Keller, obtained a permit to dredge it very easily. He did not have the wherewithal at the time to follow up, but the permit was obtained quickly and inexpensively. Also, the city claims not to have money in the budget and can't afford the project, but at the same time, the city can afford to spend millions of dollars on paver bricks and roundabouts that only impede traffic. Our contention is that if the city can afford to do construction projects that directly cause this kind of problem, they can afford to clean it up. We're also concerned about the recreational restrictions caused by the sandbar. It prevents kayakers and canoers in the neighborhood from using the public land at the end of the canal to launch their vessels. Also imparted are the fish and wildlife that come to the shallows and get trapped in the pool at the point source when the tide goes out. Manatees, frequent visitors from the past, are no longer able to reach the lush grass and fresh water at the point source. In closing, I maintain that the city must address this problem, and it will be cheaper for them to do so sooner than later. Do I have any questions?
Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that feedback. Good morning.
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Tom Cox. I reside at 27160 Driftwood Drive, Bonita Springs. I'd like to bring your attention to Article 9 on the changing of the election dates and the extension of terms. I think that a matter of this importance should go to the electorate, but they do in fact elect you and other officers. The vote by the council previously, I don't think reflects the wants and desires of the electorate. I think the only way to find out is put it in front of the citizens of Bonita Springs. I wish in that you'd do the pluses and minuses of each. What advantage it is to the city and what advantage it is to the electorate offices you now have. That's all I have.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Ogle. I live on Carnoustie Court in Bonita Springs. I'm
Yes.
also here because of Article 9. I believe that extending the current terms of the mayor and the council and moving the date of the mayoral election to November should be decided by the voters, not the city council. Many of our residents are not here during the summer, as well as it being the height of hurricane season. It would be unfair to the voters not to be engaged in any informational debates, forums, or discussions with candidates prior to the election. I urge you to let the voters decide this important issue for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Dwight Essman, and I've lived in Bonita since '93, I believe. Good morning to all of you. I want to talk about two issues this morning. Stormwater utility. Excuse me. I attended the presentation given by Stantec. It was an outstanding job. At first, I was thinking that an increase in property taxes was the way to go. but they convinced me that a stormwater utility is a much better option. We can disagree about the amount of the fee, how it should be spent, but I think we have to agree that we need one. Since Cape Coral, Fort Myers, and Naples all have one, I see no reason for Bonita to be the exception. If we want a small town that people love, we need to take care of the flooding that happens even without a hurricane. And I want to talk about changing the date of the elections, then I'm going to repeat some of the stuff that's been said. At first, I thought it was a good idea. More people will vote. But then I started thinking about it. And I don't think it's a good idea to move it, since mayoral and council elections will not generate the interest that a statewide and national election will. It's going to get lost in the shuffle, and that move will favor incumbents or people who have a lot of money to spend. I don't want a council determined by how much money you can raise. In the summer and fall, when candidate forums, town halls, debates could be held, even a lot of voters are going to be gone. That means unknown, underfunded candidates will have less of an opportunity to win. And third, the months from January to March are when even seasonal visitors and residents are here. They own property. They may not be able to vote, but they should understand the issues that the candidates are talking about, and they should have an opportunity to influence their friends and neighbors. Last, I understand it's not illegal to change the date by a vote of council, but I do think it's unethical to change the length of your term of office after you've been elected to a 4-year term. I don't think, if anything, nothing could be changed until after the 2022 elections. I believe March elections have worked since this city was formed, and I see no reason to change now. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Judy Neihart. Been a resident of the city for almost 20 years. I'd like to make some comments on the change of the election date again. I've lived here since before we became a small city. I've watched our governance grow and develop and felt proud of the work done by government at the local level. This voting change is wrong for a few reasons, and I'm going to list them now. Number one, the candidates running for a seat on council meet with their constituents on a very personal level because they are indeed our neighbors. They ask what we want in government. This change puts them in a seat for 8 months from the time they are elected in November to work with a budget they had no involvement in creating. They must wait for 8 months to put into motion the items that their local neighbors wanted to be funded. Number two, putting the local election along with other government choices, national, state, amendments, mosquito control, etc., confuses the voter. The ballot is long enough and the local council choice would be at the bottom. This tells the voter that it is the least important choice when it clearly is not. It also allows the lazy voter to skip it altogether because they don't want to read to the end. Number three, this decision should be one that is given to the voters to decide with the pros and cons presented ahead of time. There is no rush to do this, so make it the democratic way. Ask the people who pay the taxes. And number four, last but certainly not least, is the sad state of our broken, divided government at the national level. I do not know what party you represent, and I don't want to know what party you represent. It is not pertinent to the decisions you will make on my behalf. But tying the local election to the state and national elections will allow the PAC money and party politics to creep downward and affect the council election as well. Once unrestricted, non-local money is spent on other elections on the same ballot in November, it will logically leak out to our local government candidates. Please don't let this nastiness spread to our now friendly, undivided city. I love my small city. I am proud to call Bonita Springs my home. I am proud of those of you who volunteer to serve. Please don't make this change from March to November for the reasons I have stated. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Council. My name is Bernie Kramer, and I am a 17-year resident of Pelican Landing and the city of Bonita Springs. And I'm here for two reasons. One is to basically ask you, the change of election time is not a recipe for democracy. I urge you to vote against this proposed change in the local election date. The second reason I'm here is stormwater retention and living in Pelican Landing and across from Bonita Bay, which they had a nice presentation of what their concerns were. That we are at the end of Spring Creek, and we in Pelican Landing have made significant changes to our internal water system and be very willing to work with your contractors to be a part of your solution and be a team member working together, and I thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Mayor and council members. I'm Chris Corey. I reside in Bonita Bay. I'm here to speak on item 9A of your agenda. As you may know, I'm a member of the Charter Review Committee. I think this item should be first reviewed by that committee. You will then have an opportunity to vote whether or not you agree with our recommendations as to the timing of the election. But in looking back through the history of the charter, it seems to me like it's fairly clear that the length of the term of council members is 4 years, I'm sorry. That an extension of 8 months of those terms by the action of the council itself, I don't think is in the proper interest of the citizens of this town, and I would encourage you to not do this. I also think that, as one of the previous speakers said, that the people that elect council members expect them to have the opportunity to speak with respect to budgets that are currently being considered, and to delay that for a council person that's elected in November would be a sad state of affairs. So I would encourage you to let the Charter Committee do its work, see what is recommended by that Charter Committee, and to postpone or table this agenda item until further notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Mary Beth Boray, and I live in Bonita Bay. I am here to oppose the change with the election date, and I would say that what needs to happen is either the Charter Commission or going to the voters directly for the following 4 reasons, and I would ask the council to consider these questions, and if not, then I think it's important that the voters consider the question. What is the rush to do this now? Why have an election when so many of our voters are not in town? Don't we want Bonita Springs voters to participate in our local government? And finally, who benefits from making this change now? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning. How are you?
Morning, I'm good, thank you. Hi, I'm Joanne Barthold. My husband and I are brand new residents to Bonita Springs, and we own a house on Tennessee Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. And the canal behind our house, it's obviously been filled in. Another person, Gerald Butler, who addressed it at the beginning. That's what I'm here to just bring to attention. I know you have a lot of things to deal with, and a small canal in someone's backyard is probably the least of your concern, but to us, it's a big part of our home. We look at it daily. We can't put in a canoe or a kayak at certain times of day, and it's obvious that the new sandbar has not always been there. So we've been doing a lot of, asking around in the neighborhood and finding out that it's not always been that way. It was more of a running waterway, and people had docks out there that now aren't being used. So the sand and things, I haven't had time to do a lot of research on it, but I am here to say if you could find a way to take a look at this issue. It's something that's not going away. It seems to be getting worse, and it's a brand new issue for us, but we're going to, stay with it and see what can be done until something is improved with it.
Wonderful. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being here, and welcome to town.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Craig, and I'm here to speak on the issue of changing the date of elections. Most of the concerns I have already been expressed by former speakers, but I'd like to address one particular thing. As far as I can figure out, the only reason for this change that I've heard, the only sort of defense of doing this, is that it will increase participation. I think most of you know I spent most of my life as a political science professor, and one of the things that I have read is hundreds of studies on voter participation. One of the ways to make sure that you don't have voter participation is to have a very long ballot. Anything at the end of that is just not going to get the attention. One of the great advantages of having our election in March is that every other election, you stand alone, and when you don't, it's a presidential primary, which has two big issues, if there are primaries, in two parties. But it doesn't have a great long ballot with a whole lot of other questions on it. This is the time when local issues and the things that you want to bring to help solve our community can be clearly shared with the people that are going to elect you. And I urge you to not have this solution to a problem that I don't think exists, and I don't think it's the solution, if this is the reason you're pursuing it, that you hope it will be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Bonnie Whittemore, and I'm probably going to be the only outlier here, but I have worked elections in Bonita in different precincts for the last 10 years. No matter what day, what month, whatever, we have the same turnout. And the city is just part of the overall process of being included, and inclusion is better than not being included. So I do know that a sharp look at what happens, no matter when we have the election for officials like you, the number of people who vote will not change. That's just from, because we measure the percentage in every precinct, so no matter when we have primary or special elections or whatever, the same people concerned show up.
Great, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Ben Hershenson. You knew I couldn't sit this one out, so here I am. I just want to comments to the young men and women who are here today from the school. I'll tell you right now, this is how your government works. And please, get involved. If you learn nothing else from today, this is a process, and as you get older, please participate, because I've never seen such a large crowd here. I mean, I have, but the point is, people are very concerned about several issues. I think that's fantastic. You're seeing your government in action. Right. And I hope you'll leave here, and maybe someday you'll be sitting up there as well. Probably long I'll be gone. And I'm also an academic, a retired professor and dean. And I've learned over the years that even we academics can be brief and to the point. I believe in the old philosophy, KISS. You keep it simple, stupid. I'm the stupid one. And I'll tell you, two things. One, on the election. You know, you heard me say this many times. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. For heaven's sakes, why is it people spend so much time to fix something that isn't broke? I like the idea of voting in the springtime. I like the idea of one-on-one talking to candidates. And come, you know, the big November election, I don't know about anybody else. I don't know half the people I was voting for are skipping over for the judges and all this other stuff. The ballot was so long. Already, 2020 is a presidential election. Already, I'm hearing ads and seeing ads. And my God, this is going to be the longest two-year period of my life. It's horrible. You folks no one knows what party you are. Who cares? This is already expressed. I don't care, Democrat, Republican, Independent, or whatever you want to be. The point is, it doesn't enter into it in politics dealing with the city and local issues. So I hope you'll reconsider that. Somebody perhaps on the prevailing side, bring it back up again. Let's stick with what is not broken. Now, with respect to the stormwater management utility, I'm going to keep it simple. I love the presentation by Stantec. I enjoyed it the first time. I went to the one at the high school. It was fantastic, very informative. And I'll have to tell you, for those of us who are from the Golf and Country Club area, Bonita Springs, right off of 041 off Paradise Road, not that I can say 100%, but I'll guarantee you, people were so well educated, and we looked at one another. This is a slam dunk. We have to do this. The city needs it. So I hope that as the weeks and months go along, for those of you out there who have not heard about this, please learn about it. And a stormwater utility, I think, stormwater utility is an excellent way to go. We need the funds. We need to get our system back to where it belongs. and to help people who are flooded out. There is no alternative for it, and I think a dedicated tax of 25 to 50 bucks a year, where do I sign up? So I'm all for it, and I hope when it comes time, the City Council will endorse this 100%. Thank you.
Thanks for being here this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I please introduce myself, Ed Fitzgerald. I live in East Bonita Springs. I don't know if you know where that is, but when we talk about stormwater management, I think you have to find out. I hope that this new taxing policy gives you the money to correct storm problems throughout the city, but we have an East Bonita Springs basin which is severely compromised because of water damaging our resale values, our homes, and our way of life. So please, I hope you get the money, and I hope you use it wisely.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that would like to speak? Just wanting to make sure here. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on now to the consent agenda. Council, what's your pleasure?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve in a second. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba? Aye. Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye. Okay. Now, we're now going to move on to proclamations and presentations, and if we could have Dan Miles and Becky join us from Bonita Bay, please. Long time no see. It's old home week around here. Well, good morning and welcome, and you keep all the clocks moving?
Yes, sir.
And trucks moving, and
Absolutely, every day.
industrial check-in and commercial check-in and pedestrian check-in over at Bonita Bay. How many cars are going through there right now? Yeah, right. Man, it's interesting. I just got a new car and I don't have the pass, so that's an interesting little trick. Yeah, I am in trouble. But listen, we're very proud to have you here this morning. On behalf of the city of Bonita Springs, this is a certificate of recognition proudly presented to the Bonita Bay Club for being the first private club in Florida to achieve statewide level sustainability recognition. May other communities follow your leadership and example. Congratulations, signed Mayor Peter Simmons, February 20th, 2019. Would you like to say a few words?
Well, I'd just like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the City Council for this recognition. Bonita Bay was founded in a very high level of environmental stewardship back in the mid-'80s, and we've continued to progress that, and green technology, sustainability continues to become important and increasingly important. And we felt that it was important for us as a large club in Southwest Florida to be the leader in that area. So we're going to continue to press forward and make things great. So,
thank you. Pete, did you want to say anything? No? Okay. Absolutely. Here, why don't you get in the middle? Got it? You get our good side?
Wait.
It's your turn. Yeah, I guess one more?
Yes.
Sounds like the battery's running out when it takes pictures. Thank you very much.
Mr. Flynn, thank you. Yeah, okay.
Congratulations.
If we could have Tiffany Esposito please come up with the Bonita Springs Chamber. Good morning. How are you? Great. On behalf of the City of Bonita Springs, this is a certificate of recognition proudly presented to Tiffany Esposito for her outstanding achievement in graduating from the inaugural class of the United States Chamber of Commerce's Foundation Business Leads Fellowship Program. Congratulations. Signed Mayor Peter Simmons, February 20th, 2019. And I just, on a personal level, Tiffany, want to congratulate you. And, you know, you may disagree with me, but I can tell you this much. You're very pleasant and professional with your disagreement, and that is a pleasant change from the old regime. You're doing great things over at the Chamber, and I'm just very proud, and we're honored and delighted to have you in Bonita Springs. So thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate the support from both the city and the community as a whole. We wouldn't be able to be successful as a local chamber without that support and those partnerships. So I echo your comments right back at you of I appreciate your partnership and I look forward to many more successful years.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Tiffany. Thank you for your leadership. Could we have Heaven Sent Flowers come up, please? Good morning. How are you? Nice to see you. On behalf of the City of Bonita Springs, this is a certificate of congratulations proudly presented to Heaven Sent Flowers in recognition of winning first place in the 2018 Downtown Bonita Business Holiday Lighting Contest, signed Mayor Peter Simmons, February 20th, 2019. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to say a few words?
Just happy to be downtown. I love where we are and who we are and everybody coming to see us downtown. Come downtown. We love it. Thanks for recognizing
How's
us.
that roundabout working out?
Never mind. We won't go there.
You won't go there? No? Okay, all right. Well, congratulations. See, the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm letting the kids see it. Thank you very much. And if we could have the folks at Right at Home join us, please. Hello, folk. Hey, how you doing? Folk? Folk,
Not
singular?
folks, just
Yeah,
folk.
okay. How you doing, Steve? Hey, nice to see you. On behalf of the City of Bonita Springs, this is a certificate of congratulations proudly presented to Right at Home in recognition of winning second place in the 2018 Downtown Bonita Business Holiday Lighting Contest, signed Mayor Peter Simmons, February 20th, 2019. Great work.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Say a few words, Steve.
Right at Home's a newer business down in Old Bonita, and we really enjoy being here and being a part of everything that Bonita Spring has to offer. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being part of our community, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Take care. Thank you. Buffalo Chips Restaurant, please. Okay. And this is just, I'll read this. This is on behalf of the City of Bonita Springs, a certificate of congratulations proudly presented to Buffalo Chips Restaurant in recognition of winning third place in the 2018 Downtown Bonita Business Holiday Lighting Contest, signed Mayor Peter Simmons, February 20th, 2019. Buffalo Chips, thank you for everything you do for our community. Hello. Okay, let's see here, just making sure. Item F, it looks like we're at. The presentation by Florida Gulf Coast University Marine and Ecological Sciences Department, Dr. Greg Trolley and Tony Lee. Good morning. How are you, gentlemen?
Good morning, Mayor, and good morning, City Council. And first, I'd like to say thank you for your support of the Tree Advisory Committee. I'm not here to talk about that. And the Outreach Committee, I'm not here to talk about that, but thank you for your support while I am here on official work business. My name is Tony Lee. I'm Director of Development at the HGCU Foundation. And we have a very special project that's coming up. We are going to the state legislature for a final appeal for just over $30 million to complete a new water building. We all know that water is very important to this region, and the state has viewed FGC as an important partner in that initiative. But I'm here to invite you, just like Governor DeSantis had a special announcement here in Bonita. We will have our own special announcement on March 22nd at the Vester Field Station. And to give you a little preview of that and why I'd love for you to join us that day in the morning at 10 a.m., I have Dr. Greg Tolley.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, I'm Greg Tolley. I chair the Department of Marine and Ecological Sciences here at Florida Gulf Coast University. And I can't tell you too much because I've been sworn to secrecy, but let me tell you a little bit about what we're doing in the area. You know, Estero Bay is the home watershed for Florida Gulf Coast University, and Bonita Springs in Estero Bay is the home for our Marine Lab, the Vester Marine Field Station. We bring scientists and researchers from around the country and around the world to Bonita Springs to collaborate with us. We have summer field camps, science camps for middle school students. We're part of a statewide study abroad in Florida program that brings marine science students from around the state to 4 different marine labs in the state where they stay a week each. And one of those locations is here at Vester Field Station. And of course, you'll see our students on our beaches, on our waterways and canoes and boats, learning about local landscapes, local seascapes, and the ecology of important ecosystems here in Southwest Florida. But we're also partnering to work on research, to focus university research in the area. We look at harmful algal blooms, including red tide and blue-green algae. We're actually studying coastal erosion and sea level rise, the impacts on coastal communities. We're, of course, studying important ecosystems like oyster reefs and seagrass beds that are important nurseries for a lot of commercial and recreational fishes and finfish. And, of course, we're looking at the quality, the timing, and the quantity of fresh water that enters our local ecosystems. Just last week, we had students out on a state-sponsored research vessel, the RV Hogarth, from the Florida Institute for Oceanography, and they were doing a follow-up to a study they did last summer where they found almost 1,000 square miles of dead bottom off Bonita Springs and Fort Myers Beach as a result of low dissolved oxygen and the red tide. We're happy to report that things are much better. Things are recovering now. We don't have any dead bottom and the area is recovering, but this is just one way that we are teaching our students and working with our community to ensure that we maintain the quality of life here in Southwest Florida that we love and we've come to expect. And so we'd like you to think of us not only as our neighbors, but also as our partners in this effort. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Tony, any more comments? Or
Just a reminder that the invitation will be March 22nd, 10 a.m. and at the Baywater Boat Club if you would like to join us for this special announcement. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I just, on a personal note, I think few of you folks know this, but we went up to Tallahassee for the swearing in of Governor DeSantis, and literally less than 48 hours after he was sworn in early January, he was at Florida Gulf Coast University on Bonita Beach Road, the Vester Marine Biology Lab there with Dr. Jim Parsons and some others. And look, he is, and I say this proudly, he's a Teddy Roosevelt Republican. He's drilling down on the environment. He's drilling down on blue-green algae, just like he said. And I'm so excited for you and your institution that you're a big part of it. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. The council, do you have any questions for either one of them? No? Thank you, gentlemen. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to item G now, the Stormwater Utility Project update from Stantec Consulting Services, and it's green sheet 1902-048.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Stantec is here to provide you an update on the 3 public workshops that were held over the last 3 weeks. Additionally, as you'll see on the agenda, you have 2 items directly related that would be asking for further direction on. One is under the city attorney's item, which is the interlocal agreement with the Lee County Property Appraiser's Office, should you wish to move forward. And additionally, under the city manager's items, there's an additional document to the resolution establishing the stormwater utility. Of course, the final decision would be during the budget process as well, and the adoption of the final budget. But I'll leave it to Stantec to provide further updates on the public workshops.
Great. Thank you, Arlene. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Tim Hancock with Stantec. It's a pleasure to follow Dr. Trolley and the work that they do, which is so integral to how we address stormwater and water quality from a regional basis. So we appreciate all the good work that FGCU is doing.
You got the 5-hour version for us today?
The best news
Just
I'll give you
checking
is
in.
there's only 11 slides.
That's all right, buddy.
All right, so that's the good news. And we'll go
Take
ahead.
your time, just, saying hello.
We had 3 workshops. On February 7th, Bonita Springs High School, Monday, February 11th at the Bonita Springs Charter School, and Tuesday, February 19th at Bonita Springs Fire Control. And I want to really, really thank the Bonita Springs High School and Bonita Springs Charter School. They did a tremendous job of accommodating us. And then, of course, Councilman DeWitt, your help last night at the Fire Control District and your staff is much appreciated as well. All 3 of those organizations, those rooms were provided free of charge to the residents of City of Bonita Springs, and we greatly appreciate that. The first workshop at Bonita Springs High School, we were very pleased to see 78 attendees show up at that workshop. It was a nice full house. We had a great presentation. 2 members of our presentation team are here as well, Molly Williams and Jared Beck. We really enjoyed the interaction we had with the public through this process, and you have a very engaged and engaging community. One thing we did is not just to provide information in the course of a 20 or 25-minute presentation, which you'll be happy to know I promised each group to have them home in time for Jeopardy, and we succeeded each time. But we received comment cards. What we wanted to do is not just provide information, but also get feedback and hard feedback. So what we did is we asked everyone to provide a comment card, and the instructions were very simple. If you think this is the greatest idea since sliced bread, let us know. If you think this is an awful idea, we want to hear that as well. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Out of the 78 people at the first workshop, we got 46 or 7 comment cards. Try to pay too close attention to the numbers here because some people asked both a question and had a comment, so the numbers don't jibe 100%, but that's why. We received 47 comment cards. 29 were in support of a stormwater utility. 10 provided general comments, and 7 posed a question. And those cards have been provided to staff and will be part of any report going forward to you, so you have a chance to read them yourself, and they are very telling and interesting to read as well. The second workshop at Bonita Springs Charter School, we had 28 attendees. Same process, and we requested and received 18 comment cards. 11 of those 18 provided comments of support for a stormwater utility, 5 provided general comments, and there were 3 questions. Our last workshop, last night, that's why there's not an updated picture there, it was last night, we had 30 attendees. Of the 30, received 18 comment cards. 7 of those were in support of a stormwater utility, 1 was in opposition, 4 provided general comments, and 7 asked a question. So, in a quick summary, in 3 public workshops in the city of Bonita Springs, we had 136 attendees, and let me give you some background to that. The average workshop attendance across the U.S. in public information workshops is 9 to 10 people. The city of Bonita Springs is well above average. You might want to put that on the signs coming into the city. We are well above average. But the most important thing is we got 83 comment cards, and those are kind of the portals, the windows, the idea of what we're capturing in those workshops. And so we are very, very pleased and thankful to the residents of the community that took the time to come out and spend an evening with us to learn a little more about what stormwater utilities are, and most importantly, what they are not. You have to manage expectations when you're doing a program like this. The creation of a stormwater utility does not solve problems overnight. As we explain to people and have explained to you, it's a tool that can be in your toolbox if you wish it to be, to give you options down the road, and it's also one that focuses on equity among residents and businesses. Also, through the project website, we have had a couple comments submitted. All the comments and questions either have been or will be forwarded to your staff, and we'll be reaching back out to people that have questions along with your staff to do the best we can to address those questions. So, summary. Didn't think you'd hear that one coming so fast, did you, Mr. Mayor? The summary is we had a very strong community attendance, and that tells me 2 things. One, it tells me this issue is still alive and well and on the minds and hearts of your residents. The second thing is we had a lot of positive feedback. Even those that had questions or seemed to be a little hesitant were very cordial. The conversations were good. We felt very, very good about that. And there were really kind of limited questions to a stormwater utility. But to kind of capture what one of your earlier speakers said, and I may have mentioned this to Councilman O'Flynn earlier, is I'm reminded of a quote by Courtney Stevens in the book The Lies About Truth. If nothing changes, nothing changes. If you want change, make some. And so the question is, from most of the people, what we heard is status quo is not working. That's what we heard. Whether a stormwater utility is the right next step for you or not is your decision as policymakers. Hopefully, we have provided information to the community. Plus, I believe our first workshop has been posted on your website. The video has, so anyone who did not attend the workshop would have the ability to review that. The one from last night was recorded as well, and it will be posted in the next few days. So again, folks can still refer back to that on your website. We appreciate the city in making that available to them so that it can reach a broader audience. And quite honestly, that's all I have for you today.
No, thank you very much. And Fred, I know you had a question, and then
Yeah,
we'll see what other
I have
questions
a
there might be
couple
or comments.
questions, and then a thought. Number one, did anyone say anything close to what one of the public comments was, that if we have such a stormwater management district or whatever, that we're not going to be using that as a way to reduce flooding and so forth?
No, sir, that was a fairly unique comment, but I will tell you, in managing expectations, the one thing that we stress to people all along is that what we are proposing currently to the City Council is not to create a utility for the purposes of reaching out and grabbing a bunch of money. What we're saying is the most logical first step is to take what you're doing now and move it into a stormwater utility platform. Whether the council chooses to increase funding or not is a policy decision, and we have not been hired to make that recommendation. The other thing we've told the public in each of these workshops is your staff is currently out there looking at each almost community by community basis. They're doing an assessment. It's going to take some time to complete that assessment. And we're not advocating that the city get out in front of that assessment. That assessment is going to give you a little better roadmap of some ideas and things you may want to do in the future. So we've left the idea of what the stormwater utility will or will not accomplish as a policy decision for you. At a minimum, we're suggesting that the level of service that is currently enjoyed by the city would either stay the same or potentially go up. It certainly would not go down through the creation of a stormwater utility.
Now, the last is a comment. Even though I'm pleased to know that we did way better on public participation, either we did something wrong in getting the word out of what this was about, but being the topic, just Worthington Country Club should have filled one of those things. All these communities, Quinn Street had more people flooded than we had in total show up at these workshops. So either they don't understand that this is a key solution to reducing flooding. You're not going to eliminate flooding in areas that always have traditionally flooded unless we spend more money than the property's worth, and you could buy it cheaper. But this, I'm surprised. So hopefully, are there any other workshops going to happen on this in any of the next phases?
At this point, as a part of our work program, this was the public engagement session of what we were anticipated, what we expected to do. The website remains active and alive, and through the website, you can always reach more people. If the city wished to do more public outreach at some point in the future, we certainly are open to having that conversation with you.
I think we should try a couple more and really get the word out of what this is really all about, because it's not only about maintaining and all that, but if they don't understand what it's about, then they won't understand if we happen to vote it in. And let me say this, I'm in favor of this, but I'm also willing and want to be honest with the people and say it will eventually be a tax. And I think, point made. Thank you.
Okay. Mike, any comments or thoughts or anything? No? No? Peter?
I would suggest we move the other two items that are similar to this and deal with them sequentially rather than have them sprinkled through the agenda after council members have their comments for Tim.
Okay, great. Laura?
Yeah, I agree with Peter. We should combine them.
Okay. Greg?
No, I agree. And I just want to thank Stantec. They did a fabulous job. And not contrary to what Councilman Forbes is saying, I think everybody knows about it, and maybe it's a trust level. Maybe that's why we don't have, I mean, we're above average of what Tim had said already about the attendees. And maybe the people in Worthington or east of Bonita have the trust factor of you, their councilman, to have their best interests at heart. I just, you know, to keep dragging it out, we've already voted on a few things to speed things up. I don't want to drag this out with 3 or 4 more meetings or workshops. I think the public does know. I think that Laura and her staff have done a great job by getting it out in the word. We've got a website that really should be able to reach every single person in Bonita Springs via the website, either through their phone, their home computer, iPad, wherever. We've had 2 comment cards on it. I think that's what the stat was, so 2 comment cards on it. So the word is out there. Now, maybe it's a complacency, maybe they're waiting on us to figure it out, but I think Stantec staff have done a good job to say, look, we're gonna remain status quo. It's a shift from ad valorem to a separate fund and so forth. It's not a magic bullet, as Tim has said a few times. This, and to your benefit, Councilman Forbes, it's not gonna stop flooding, but it may give us an avenue to improve on it down the road somewhere. So I think that's what it is. I would hate to belabor this and drag it out past, because realistically, we'd have to have these workshops prior to what staff wants to have our budget hearings. And I think we've already moved up our budget workshops and our budget stuff by, you know, months, not days. So I'd hate to have that be a product of that, of us doing it, so.
Plus, they have a time cutoff. I think that's
Yeah,
one of the next
exactly.
items.
I just have a question. I mean, you've done a great job, and I think that the people from my community that I have interacted with are pleased with the presentation, and they understand the structure of what is being proposed by a stormwater utility. And it really is a funding mechanism, and I think we have to separate that from the projects, all right? That's a whole different issue. And here's my question. I assume we've gotten a lot of kind of general education of how this works, but we still haven't gotten down to the formula of how this absolutely going to work, right? Because we have to, there are different mechanisms by which we can use for permeable versus impermeable surfaces, and then we're going to come up with some kind of formula. So that has not been determined yet. You're going to present that to us. Is that correct?
Actually, the elements of that have been provided to you and completed already. By using aerial photograph interpretation, we have already identified all impervious surfaces within the city of Bonita Springs. And so what happens next is, and this is a behind-the-scenes element, is that work then is created and turned into what's called a billing file. In other words, every parcel then is identified as to how much impervious it has, which, by the way, that's already been done. We haven't created a billing file because we don't want to get ahead of the council's direction and decision. But all the calculations are done.
Well, my question is, because if somebody's going to say, I live at blah, blah, what is my formula, and how can I figure out what's happening? That's what people want to know, and that's what our community want to know. And we haven't even determined whether a credit system we haven't decided that yet, correct?
We have given you the framework of a credit system, but you're correct.
Right.
What we would do is come back to you with the finer details.
Right.
The general parameters we provided, we believe are all still valid. We would just fine tune that and be able to.
You have the data, and then we could manipulate it in certain ways. I think when we get to that more specific point, and I think this is my recollection from reading in the paper when Collier County had some issues about implementing it, that there needed to be a lot more interaction and details that are presented to people. I think that's where we need to engage our community when we really talk about that specific level. So I guess my question is, should we agree to follow up on this? What is the timing on that? Would that be in September when we finally decide to do it? I mean, sometime between September and now, we have to come up with actually some numbers on specific projects.
Well, I'll
properties.
do this in coordination with your staff, but it was our intent to continue coming back to you on a monthly basis,
Right.
doing exactly what you have proposed.
Correct.
One of the things you requested, I think it was 2 meetings ago, was it'd be nice to see some examples.
Correct.
In other words, if I live in a 2-story condominium complex with at-grade parking, what does this mean to me versus a high-rise versus a single-family home? And I think through those examples, literally pictorial examples of how the fee would apply and how they're calculated, 90% of the folks out there see exactly what it means to them. And so, yes, ma'am, that work would continue should the council wish to continue with this process.
It's the staff's intent to have our monthly meetings as well, to continue those and make sure the public's aware. It would be on the agenda. It would be an item that they could speak at during the time of public comment as well.
Yeah, I just think that we need to move in some kind of timely fashion to actual numbers, you know.
We are ready, willing,
Yeah,
and able to
that's-
do that for you.
And that would, I think, address Councilman Forbes' concerns about people, that'll bring people out. When they actually see a number there and it's particular to their unit, then people will say, oh my goodness, or that's interesting, or whatever.
And what you will see is, you will see at that time, the actual numbers that people see are going to be in line with precisely what we've presented.
Correct.
We've already factored in what we anticipate to be credits
Mhm.
for different communities and that
Mhm.
type of thing in coming up with the numbers you see. So the numbers will not exceed what you've been provided.
Okay, thank you.
Fred?
Well, I've got one last idea, and I think it's not a bad one. Once you have us a little farther along, like Amy is requesting, and I think she's on target, you come back to us, and we will get somehow it set up with each HOA to where you can present this. And if you can get the HOAs to understand it, even if only 30, 40 people of the community show up, and that'll be the minimum, you'll way increase the number of people that know and understand it, but then they fan out. Barbara Craig that spoke at public comment, she would probably turn out a lot of people from Pelican Bay, Bonita Bay, all the HOAs. And then we can try and figure out a way where those that don't live in HOAs, but neighborhoods that are kind of got like leaders, bring them in, and each city councilman will have to do a little bit of legwork to help it. But I think that would be a good thing for them to thoroughly understand what this is about, what the potential is for it.
We're all about public engagement and information.
And I don't take my first comments that I was blaming you or Laura, anybody. I just think we need to get them to understand, because I can assure you if we were doing something else, you'd have a lot of people showing up and making comment and all that, even in this meeting. I support this. So.
I would just say that in my district, I have reached out to HOAs and other community associations, community leaders. There's always room for more outreach. That's apple pie. Totally agree with that. But the feedback I'm getting is positive. No question what Amy says. When the number is out there, rubber's going to meet the road. I don't think it's a large number, and it's a process. But obviously, we need to continue outreach.
Right. And did we want to discuss, I don't know if there are any more comments on this, the next item that's related with this?
Yes.
Derek, do you need to tee that up, or?
Well, the first one is the interlocal agreement, and basically, what we've been operating on, I apologize.
That's
is
okay.
We're trying to get.
Happens to me every day, buddy.
We're trying
Just
to get
roll with it.
to the March 10th deadline in order to allow these proposed assessments at least show up on people's individual trim notices. You won't have to take a final action until you approve your final millage and your budgets in September. But in order for the property appraiser to start building out the system that they require in order to make these assessments, if we go forward, we need to get that to them immediately. So they've asked us to consider an interlocal agreement where we agree to pick up the costs that they're implementing that program. So that's what you've got before you.
So can I just rephrase that in my own
Sure.
words? This is not a decision to impose this.
No.
You have a deadline of March 10th, and you need running room for us to further consider it.
Correct.
And this is an action to provide the running room.
Right. Otherwise, you couldn't move forward this till next year.
Motion to approve.
Yeah.
Second.
And there's a second. Yeah, and Fred?
Yeah.
Further
and-
comments?
Well, I support that 100%, because that trim notice going out, if there's going to be any real pushback, it'll come from that trim notice.
Right. And I was just going to say, Derek, I assume the process is the same. I've never contested what my house is worth, but let's say you get a trim, your house is worth $200,000. You disagree with that, you appeal, there's a process. It would follow that process?
This is not, because this one is not going to be an ad valorem situation. You're not going to the VAB. This would be a situation where we've made assessments. The city has made the assessments and the determinations for each property. So they would come to the city. And of course, this being something that you haven't adopted yet fully, you'll probably see that's the point that Councilman Forbes pointed out. People will show up and say, what is this proposed charge? And you'll have that opportunity.
But it's basically, there's details.
Yeah.
But it's basically the same price for every house as at least what Tim laid out in the last presentation. we had issues, I remember Amy asking about them with respect to how you define multifamily, how big is that, where to cut off, but somebody, I think it was Ben, said, keep it simple, stupid, and I think, with all respect to Stantec, Dave, come on. Keep it simple, Stantec.
There you go.
I think that's what's going to be. It's not going to be, it's going to be $25 or $50 or $10 or something
Right.
like that.
I think what'll end up happening.
Per household.
Yeah, and I believe this was the conversation that Stantec had presented previously. In future years, you may look to refine the system, but it'll be on a global level for certain classifications of property. It won't be individual property owners.
Global level. All right.
Well, one last question. If we, I'm going to vote for this, but when do we have to come up with the exact agreement on the number that Stantec has proposed that would translate into what Mayor Simmons and Councilman O'Flynn and all of us would get on our trim notice?
I'm not sure when they're going to have the final numbers.
I believe it wouldn't have to be the same time we have to do it as a city through the trim notice, which would be July 1st, isn't it?
Yeah, but right now, it's about developing the assessment area, which is citywide. So it's fairly straightforward. There'll be an ongoing conversation with the property appraiser after that, when we give them the exact numbers per classification of property.
If I may, trim notice is one thing. I believe that if you proceed with adoption of stormwater utility, a separate first-class mailing occurs to all property owners within the city specific to the stormwater utility.
All right.
I suggest to you, because this was not done in another community, that you put a cover letter on that.
Yeah.
That helps explain what it means, because the state wording is very, very cumbersome. The cover letter explains what it means and also directs people to the website, for example, for more information.
My question is, when is the drop dead date approximately over where we can, if we don't like the number that you've come up with, that we can either boost it or reduce it or whatever?
The final, your notice will set a cap.
Right.
So the notice sets a maximum. You can
So
establish.
when will that maximum be set? When do we have time, when do we have to accept whatever that maximum is?
I do not have, we have a timeline schedule that we've put
Could
together.
we have that at the next meeting?
And I was going to say, if it is time sensitive that your next meeting puts you behind the 8 ball, we'll get it to you ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yes, we have that timeline laid out. I just don't have it with me today, and I'm not recalling
And
that.
I
next
would
hard step.
suggest that if it did put us behind the 8 ball, that we have a special meeting, because that number is going to be very important. I think we have to be forthright about what we really plan to do, as opposed to start low and go other ways. Yeah.
Right. Council, further questions or comments?
Will it show in the cover letter, or if we do go this way with a cover letter, that the ad valorem tax will change as well? Because we're not creating a new tax, we're shifting money to a special area, correct?
You're changing the method of collection for your stormwater costs to a stormwater utility. What you choose to do or not to do on your millage rate is a separate but parallel conversation. So we can craft that cover letter in a manner, and we'd work very closely with your staff, who obviously is going to be working with you, to make sure that it gives as clear a picture as possible for folks. But Councilman Forbes, your question really is, at that budget hearing, you can actually set a number that is below what has been advertised. So you have until that point to pick your final number, is if that was the question. But we're going to give you information well in advance of that, and we don't expect that to be the final point of decision unless you want to lower it. But that all gets done in the same time.
Mike and then Greg.
Yeah, I'm still against this. I'm not for adding another tax on our citizens. Based on preliminary numbers from you guys, the average houses in my area would be a 30 to 40% increase, and some people that have lived here a long time with homestead exemptions, it's more than doubles what they're paying to the city. And you know, I understand your concern about lowering the ad valorem, but if we lowered that by the same dollar amount total bucket wise, because ad valorem's done percentage wise, it does not offset what those people will be paying total. So I mean, if they're paying an extra $50, they may save an extra $5 by adjusting the ad valorem. So totally against it, not for adding another tax. If we need more money, I will consider raising the ad valorem, so. But not for adding another tax that, you know, we already have enough taxes as is. People know when to show up to argue against the ad valorem or, you know, make their comments known. I just don't see adding another tax as being more transparent. I think it just makes it harder for people to stay on top of all the taxes they're paying. So I'm against this. I'll be voting against even forwarding these because I don't believe in the end result, so.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. Greg and then Fred.
I would just defer to Ann to find out from property appraiser on the trim notice. I would just assume it would go out during the trim notice, so we'd have to have it all done by end of July when we set ours, which is what, Ann? Is it June or July? July something, isn't it, that we have to set our maximum millage?
We're required to communicate to the property appraiser by August 4th.
Okay.
What the amount is, the millage for the trim notice.
Okay, so August 4th.
Fred?
I'm going to vote to move this to this. If I see that we're going to fail to move it, then I'm going to do what I plan to do anyway. Councilman O'Flynn mentioned something. The more I think about it, it's what we ought to do. We're going to put this to the damn vote of the people. And if we're going to be honest, we're going to show what kind of money we need and all that, and we're not going to get into this. We're going to do this, because even if we cut the taxes the first year to get it in, it'll come, I mean, I want the people to approve it. If they approve it, which I believe they will, if they can't, after what we went through with Irma and being the third worst hit city in the state, then I guess what follows is what we deserve. But I think we have to let the people vote on that.
So if I can,
Yeah.
Peter?
Yeah, if I can reflect on that. I do think, the reason I think we probably need to take it to the people is because I don't think this council is unanimous, which surprises the heck out of me when you consider the flooding we had. You know, it's easy to talk about taxes in the abstract. Who here in this room is for a tax increase? No one is. No one is. But we had, remember the maps, we had 20 neighborhoods flooded. We had 450 homes flooded. We had 4,000 homes with serious water in the street for 2 weeks. We've received nothing from Tallahassee. I know a lot of people made efforts. We've received nothing from Tallahassee last year, in spite of the fact that there were 26 other communities that received money for stormwater projects. I'm not blaming that on Tallahassee. I'm just saying the people of Bonita Springs ought to understand that as a fact. We have, coming with the FEMA mitigation grant money, almost $600 million coming to the state of Florida, of which Bonita Springs, if we're lucky, will get about $3.3 million. We were the third worst hit after the Keys, Everglades City. So to me, it's obvious we need a funding source. Why? For public safety. And secondly, selfishly, for every member of this community, the value of their property. We have become known as a city that floods. We know of neighborhoods, I'm not going to mention them, where the value of the houses have gone down. Compare that to, I'm paying $50 in taxes and a $25 raise is, what is that, a 50% raise? This is something that I wish the council would agree on, and if some people on council are just going to say, darn it, I'm against taxes and these are a bunch of tax and spend liberals, that's not a conversation. That's not a real conversation. That's just sloganeering. And if we end up on that point on this council, my view is then if the council can't understand it, fine. Let the people of Bonita Springs vote on it in a referendum and get the facts out to everybody. So that's where I am.
Well, and I'd like to know why we failed to get any money. I mean,
Good
that
question.
should be the focus.
A focus.
Because, you know, remember, income tax was only going to be, federal income tax was going to be just temporary. And it's, I don't think in my lifetime it's ever going to go away, that's for sure. And so it's a line that maybe it's $50, but maybe in a year it's $500. And it's just a line where people can add. So I'm very cautious. My community just switched to Summit. And when I go on demand, it says free, but then it says rent. And I'm like, I don't want to rent it, I want it free. And I know it's a line that all of a sudden they can just put in 99 cents. and so it's just this little tiny itty bitty change, and there you go. So
I'm not saying this is free.
And almost everybody that talked when our
Right.
public commentary, they use the word tax.
Right.
So I think that we should bring it to the people and let them decide if they want it.
I think
Amy?
if we want to be precise in our language, this is a user fee. I mean, that's
Right.
basically the structure of what it is. It is an extra expense to anybody that has to bear it, but it's trying to connect the delivery of a service to the areas that are in most of need and how to address it. Nobody wants to spend more money. You know, every day you get the bill and they all come in at the same time. We're not immune to that kind of reaction. But to address some of the things that you brought up, Laura, it's a reality. We can complain that we didn't get the money from Tallahassee or whoever else is supposed to make this determination. But what happened when you went and talked to the people? What did they tell you? They said, oh, 35% participation is okay, but 50% is better. So whether we get money or not, we're going to be paying 50 cents on the dollar. And we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of projects that we believe we are required to save our city. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars, not just this year, not just next year, but for, I would say, 5 to 10 years in the future. In my view, I think that this is the most important thing I can contribute to in the council. And we talked about that when we had our objectives. So unless we want to, I mean, the alternative certainly is to raise taxes, but nobody has been willing to do that. We tried to get alternative fees through the communications of that. That was voted down. That's what we've done. Now we're trying to, at least in a transparent way, show that we have an expenditure that we have no other means of funding. So our choice is not to do these projects, which I'm totally against, or to use a mechanism that's very transparent. And the people could come and talk to us and say, no, don't make those expenditures. That's what the answer should be, not don't raise the taxes. They should come to us and say, we don't want you to do the projects. I've never heard anybody say, don't do the projects. We have everybody coming from the north. That's all they talk about. You try to talk about some of this other stuff, they don't want to hear it. What are you doing about the water? What are you doing about a community that floods? I'm worried about my real estate project. That's what they're talking about. So let's make up our mind as a council. We're either going to do, in my view, and you could disagree with me, the most important task of the city, or we could decide not to do it. I don't know where we're going to come up with the 50%. I'm concerned about that. But I don't want to say, let's not do the projects. And this is, I mean, this is why Naples does it. I mean, these other communities have done this because that's why they're functioning better than we are. They have a funding source that is devoted to something that is existential in their communities. Anyway, I think, and I don't disagree with, if we don't agree here, you know, we should bring it to the people. Well, we're going to have to do a sales job on them because people don't really understand what we're doing. Or some of them do. I mean, I'm surprised how much positive feedback we've gotten here. But we need help, and we have to focus on the expenditure side. That's what we have to decide. Either do it or don't. You know.
Thanks, Amy. Greg?
No, I agree with Amy. I mean, this is something that's very important to everybody here in Bonita Springs. And, you know, this is a hard decision to make. And I don't disagree with Peter or what we're taking to the vote, but I agree with Amy. I mean, we were elected up here to make these hard decisions. If we're going to go and take it to the people to vote on a hard decision, and, you know, we might as well take the budget to vote too every time. If we decide to raise the millage, let's take it to a vote. And I disagree a little bit with Mike on that. It's a user fee, as Amy says it. Everybody's going to pay their fair share. And again, we're going to make the decision whether to raise it or lower it, or the future council is going to make a decision to raise it and lower it. in the future, just like we do with ad valorem. So if we see a project that needs to be done, we're gonna make that decision. The other benefit I see to this stormwater, utility that we have, you can single out a neighborhood. Let's use Lake Shalimar as an example. They need to have some extra work done. That's not borne by the rest of the city. It can be a line drawn around that thing, and now you have a special assessment for that because that's what that community wants. That's what that HOA wants. That's what that neighborhood wants. Let's go back to, like Mike says, if we need the project done, let's do it on a citywide level. Now everybody in the city has to pay for Lake Shalimar or Imperial Bonita Estates or Citrus Park to be brought up to snuff or up to something better than what they have now. Whereas now, with this, you don't have to create an MSTU as you would have to do in the future. You can actually do it, draw a circle around that neighborhood or that community and say, look, you've got failing ditches. It's not in city. It's not part of, it was part of your Southwest Florida's water management your department, what your LDO was supposed to be, how it was supposed to be designed. You haven't kept it up, so now it's your responsibility, not the city's responsibility, to do that. So I think we're put up here and elected by each one of our districts to make those hard decisions. And you know, here we are in the next hour, we're going to decide whether to go against a charter and change the election date. We're not willing to put that out to the vote, but here's something that we're looking to improve the city on and create a user fee for it and possibly either lower millage or whatever. It's not a tax shift or, as Mike's brought up before with the communication tax, that is an added tax. You're correct on this. This one could be take the $660,000 that we're currently using, take it away from ad valorem, lower the millage to that amount, and shift the user fee to that. So that's just my 2 cents. I mean, we had a 4-3 vote, or you know, a vote up here not to even go forward on the other election thing, but on this one right here, we've got to be united. This is what we're elected to do: make these hard decisions. We haven't got money in the last 2 years from Tallahassee, or last year and a half from Tallahassee,
or the water management
or
district.
the water management district. We can't even get them to agree on to shunt water south, how much it is. You know, we want this, they want that. So, to put it bluntly, we got to take matters in our own hands, and each neighborhood's going to have to do their fair share. And it's a user fee. It's not a tax. It's a user fee.
And I would ask Stantec, is it kind of all or nothing? I mean, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to put it in terms that are that blunt, but is it all or nothing?
No, sir. In looking at your budget, you have two primary funding sources for all of your dollars spent on stormwater. One is property taxes and the other is gas taxes. If memory serves me right, it's $883,000 into operating out of ad valorem, about $300,000 into repair and replacement out of gas taxes, and then another, last year in your budget, I think you had $505,000 out of property taxes that went towards matching grant funds. So when you add all that up, there's a total number there. The one that probably has a question mark for me, and again, this is not necessarily as much in my consulting role as that I'm trying to look at it from your resident standpoint, is people can determine what they pay in property taxes. You know, we can create an equivalency millage rate for what they pay to address stormwater that everybody can apply to. That gas tax number, however, if you took it out of gas tax, you don't even have the option of turning back and giving gas tax relief to people because the gas tax is set at a standard. So there were three categories, A, B, and C. A and C are funded out of property taxes, and those to me are the ones that are most logical to look at and be able to speak with your residents clearly about. The one that is in the greatest jeopardy to me is that category C. That is your matching grant funds. I think of the $50 a year, that one would equate to about $15 a year per ERU. That's the one that, as Councilman Quarumba has clearly stated, you have no future identified funding source for. Last year, you identified $505,000 that came out of property taxes as matching grant funds. When you look at your future capital projects, you're relying on matching grant funds in the future to fund those, and you have no matching source identified. That is probably, in my opinion, the most vulnerable of those three, and the one that probably needs the greatest attention. So no, sir, you would have the opportunity to look at those three categories and determine if all are appropriate, two are appropriate, or one is appropriate as an initial step And then you can, every year, adjust or modify as you see fit for the best interest of your community.
Thank you. Council, do you have other questions or concerns? Okay, we've had a motion and a second. No further discussion? Seeing none? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Nay.
Mayor Simmons?
No.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
No.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye, but I'll make a comment. I will make a motion at the future that we put this on the ballot to be voted on by the people, probably November of '20.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Passes 4-3.
Right. Wonderful. Thank
Now
you very much.
That was
Derek.
just the interlocal agreement, so that was the contentious one. The next one is the actual resolution setting out the intent of the city to adopt a stormwater fee program and setting the maximum ERU at $50. Now, that's just the maximum, and this is, again, tied to the interlocal so that we're sending this information to the property appraiser so they can start compiling everything.
So the maximum ERU is the maximum price for, ERU is, why don't you explain it?
Equivalent residential unit. Now, that will be broken out depending on a variety of factors, whether it's single-family and then commercial projects, et cetera. I'm sure Stanton can give you a little more
But a
breakdown,
typical
but that's
house
the
would-
maximum.
A
that
typical
we're-
house would be 1 ERU?
Correct.
Okay.
A single-family home is considered to be 1 ERU, as well as lower-density multifamily, and we, again, can give you a more detailed breakdown. But per ERU, the maximum charged would be $50.
Into perpetuity?
No, ma'am. We don't tie your hands. That's not our job.
This is the one that does have the March 1st deadline if you were to want to move forward.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's been a motion to approve in a second. Is there further discussion or questions?
Just same opposition, you know, to me it's an added tax. We already have the ad valorem, and I said I'd be willing to increase that. I'm not up here saying that I don't want to take care of flooding. You know, we did have a big problem, but we do have a way to take care of it. If we need to raise ad valorem, if staff tells me that we need to raise it this next time around, I would be more than willing to take that into consideration and probably raise taxes if we really need to do that. So, like I said, I just do not want to add another tax that, you know, it's just going to be harder to keep control of. It's $50 now. It could be more later. So I'm, again, voting against it.
We had a discussion, Greg pointed this out already previously. Place was not packed. It's good to see a bunch of people here listening to this. We had a discussion about a minuscule ad valorem tax to get our general fund off the rock bottom of 0. The vote on that was 4-3 against. That had everything to do with flooding. We had a similar thing with respect to, I guess it was one of the 2 utility fees, and I think the vote was 4-3 against. So at some point, you can't just keep icing a puck, hitting it down the ice and saying, well, I'll come back for that later. When you come back, not directed at any person here, but, and then you vote no later, well, I would have considered something else. The bottom line is the flooding. And it once again does concern me, the 4-3 vote, because it puts, it's very important, in my view, that the people of Bonita Springs understand we had the flooding. We swung and missed big time in Tallahassee, big time. So I would hope that wherever we end up on this, whoever communicates or makes comments for the city, if they're in the position of saying I'm against taxes, would preface that by talking about swinging and missing in Tallahassee, swinging and missing at the Water Management District. That's not personal. I'm just saying, please put it in perspective. We need a funding source.
I have a question. If this is passed, we could still not execute it in September. Isn't that this is
Right.
just to leave open the option that we could have between now and September to go out to the public, get a lot more feedback, and then if it is the case that there is a groundswell of people that say, don't go forward with it, or put it on the March election for a referendum, we could still do that in September. But if we don't pass this today, then we're going to be foreclosed from doing this. All right. So my recommendation, just from a practical point of view, whether you're in favor of it or not, you could even say, I'm not in favor of it, but even if it passes 4-3, which I hope it does, we can go forward, and then we'll devise a mechanism by which we can bring people into the mix, and if we decide at that time to go to referendum, we could still do. But I think it'd be really a bad idea not to pass this so that we can't keep our options open. Why foreclose them when it's not necessary?
Greg and then Fred.
Yeah, I agree with Amy. I mean, we've got to pass this today. I mean, we can always stop it in the 11th hour. And I do agree with Peter. I mean, you know, the flooding didn't go away just because another year went by. And, you know, the legislature last year met in January. So we knew well in advance that we weren't getting the money from the state at that point. And unfortunately, we didn't do a lot to raise taxes, to do whatever, to start working on this flooding problem. And shame on me, shame on us for not convincing each other to that. And now we do have the opportunity to possibly do that. So I agree with Peter. I mean, we can't keep relying on Tallahassee. I mean, realistically, Arlene, you've been here since the inception, and I will put you on the spot. How much money have we received from Tallahassee over the lifetime of the city, Okay, so go over the last, all right, so let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase that. Since I've been on council for 3.5 years, I think we've received zero money from Tallahassee on every year an ask.
Correct, and we have
So-
approximately 500.
I think
Approximately.
I'm aware, I think it's 750 over the lifespan of the city, but
I think
I
my
know of 5
experience-
that I've got, and I think 250.
And that's my point, is that we've got to do something here, whether it's raise taxes, create an MSTU, create a stormwater utility, we've got to do something. We can't, as Peter said, it can't keep ice in the puck, or you can't keep kicking the ball or keep kicking the can. We've got to either A, put our money where our mouth is, and make the hard decision, and far be it from me, you know, not to get reelected because I voted for taxes, then so be it. In my heart, and when I look in the mirror, I'm doing the right thing for everybody in Bonita Springs to try and do something. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's where we're going to rely on staff and the engineers out there. Hey, this is what you said to do. We went forward with it. We've got you the money somehow, and now let's do it. Now, if it comes up and blows it up in our face that we should have done X instead of Y, then we'll have to live with that. But at least get us in the ballpark. Let us start playing the game.
Fred?
Yeah, I agree with what Amy said. But this isn't a final vote, but I believe I'm correct in saying if we were going to take it to the people, we have to make that decision before September when we do our final budget. If I was to guess, I would say somewhere between July and August is probably, and I think I'll make the motion well before that, and then we can let the chips fall where they may.
That's Tom's right.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just.
Yes, Derek.
I want to point out that this was advertised as a public hearing. I know that we had a lot of people come speak at the outset of the meeting, but just
Yes.
to make sure that we're dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's.
Right, no.
I would go ahead and open this up as a public hearing.
Absolutely. Council, questions or comments at the moment? Okay, members of the public that would like to speak on this issue, please come forward.
Where do I begin? Ben Hershenson. All right, I'm going to try to keep it simple, Stantec. I sit here and I'm saying to myself, look, you know, I've been on a lot of boards in my lifetime, currently president of an HOA. You have to make tough decisions sometimes. That's the way it works. We increased our dues this year because people were complaining about landscaping. Ever since we had a new landscaper, it's cost money. Guess what? No complaints. Now, I'm not saying there's going to be 1 out of 77. The point is, it works. It works when you tell people why you are going to do what you're going to do. Don't end it now, please. For gosh sakes, if you shut it off now, you're going to regret it, and you're going to hear about it. Each and every one of you will have some future trying to get elected to some position, I'm sure. And the point is, I'm not going to forget this. And, you know, in my old age, I never thought I'd become an activist, but I guess I am. In reference to having people know about it, with all due respect, I send out emails. I have sent out emails to my members. I told them about the issue, potential development of the golf course. I told them about the stormwater utility. They're informed, and that's the job each and every one of us have if we're part of an HOA. Even if you're watching at home, spread the word, for heaven's sakes. Get educated about what we're talking about here. This is critical, and if anybody's a fiscal conservative, it's me, and I recognize the need here, and that's the fiduciary responsibility. I got elected to my position. You each got elected to your position. For heaven's sakes, own up to that. This is not, I'll tell you what the takeaway is going to be from here. If someone watching at home, oh my God, they're going to raise my taxes. That's the takeaway, because communication is very deliberate. It has to be simple, clear, and concise. And what I'm afraid of is that people are watching at home, shut the TV off and say, oh my God, they're going to raise my taxes. No, not going to happen that way. This is critical, I think, for the future of this community, and I beg each and every one of you, please, for heaven's sakes, at least move this along. You can always say no later. And as for going to a referendum, if people up there don't understand all of this, then sure as heck the people out there aren't going to understand. But how many people are going to vote yes on a referendum to perhaps potentially increase my taxes by 5 cents or whatever it's going to be? People don't like taxes. But when you explain to them, just like we had to hire a new landscaper, they're going to understand this is a service I'm willing to pay for, because now my landscaping is so much better. My community looks so much better. Well, we can expand this to the city of Bonita Springs. This is nothing but a positive follow-through for this city. And I beg each and every one of you, please reconsider. Please do what is right. Don't end it here. Let this continue. The dialogue is critical. And we're going to do a lot of education. I know what my role is going to be, and each of you have that role as well. But to simplify it, I'm against taxes. Oh, boy.
Other members of the public that would like to speak?
The gentleman said clear and concise. I have no idea what that means. And I can't be clear and concise. I will tell you, Mr. Forbes, you mentioned Worthington Country Club as if we are not up in arms over the flooding. Thus, our country club is disgusted with you, with this city, with this county, and with Southwest Florida Water Management District. The reason we didn't overload that consultancy meeting is the mission had nothing to do with water. It has to, that mission statement was for you, to convince you to change your taxing method. And that didn't say we're going to solve the problem. I want the problem solved. And you have no other way to solve it without having some money come in. Someplace, you have to. Your consultant was working for you to help you find a way to reallocate the money. I am in total agreement with that. There's no way of fixing this problem. But don't misunderstand the disgust of Worthington Country Club. We are disgusted with the city. We are disgusted with Southwest Florida. And I'm going to tell you, it's the wrong place, but you have no choice. And every one of you says it in a different way. You have no choice. We need you. We need a solution. Not just for Worthington. Bonita Springs is a city. East Bonita is part of the city. You've got to eliminate this reputation we have, which is horrible. I'm just going to take one other second. One of the ways, without a lot of money, there's a 6-foot pipe in Bonita Grande Road that would take most of the flooding away from our little East Bonita section. Southwest Florida won't let us hook into it. You want to talk about me coming to your meeting in arms? You should have arms and going to Southwest Florida to make them solve that problem. A 7-foot concrete storm water drainage pipe that would eliminate the flooding in Worthington Country Club. Nobody does anything. Okay, You're going to do the right thing. It's very obvious, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
Again, my name is Barbara Ogle, and I've sat here today and I've watched the 7 of you, and you have argued, you have said no new taxes. I've lived in this city for 21 years. I think we need some type of funding to fix what is broken, and we have nothing in the general fund. And I listen to you, and you all bicker, and you all fight, and you all is 4-3, 4-3, 4-3. My community has over 200 homes. We did flood. We support this initiative. And for you to sit here and say, take it to the public, or we don't want it, or we don't want taxes, or it's going to be a tax, or it's going to be a utility, we need a solution. And we need you people to step up and make important decisions because we elected you. We elected you to serve the needs of the entire city, not the 7 of you sitting up here and what you desire and what you want. We have flooding. We need funds, we need a solution, and we need you people to get together and make a decision for the benefit of this city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Dwight Essman again. I just basically want to second everything that Ben and Barbara just said. Ben, you said 78 people showed up at the high school meeting. I was there. I guarantee you, maybe that was the only people that signed in. There were a lot more that were there. How many communities have a stormwater utility in the state of Florida? Almost 200. Why? Why would you be opposed to it? No new taxes? Then let's get rid of all taxes. That'll save everybody money. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi,
morning.
I'm Bonnie Whittemore. Having served 8 years as president of an HOA, we do have our own internal drainage process included in our fees, but I strongly recommend you don't use the word tax. Use the word user fee or user utility, which is what you get from BSU, which is what you get from FPL. And by doing that, you're spreading it across the whole city. We don't have any choice. It's how we do it tied to the budget. Everything we do, I think someone previous to me said they had to raise their fees. Well, we hadn't raised our fees in 3 years, so you get involved with the budgeting process. Your budgeting process is tightly tied to how you communicate. This is a user's fee. Using the word tax will send all of your constituents into orbit. So bring it in, talk it as user fee. No one will object because everybody in Bonita, I personally use my car to transfer meals from the dog track to people down that were flooded out. So any of us who are full-timers here, no, you have no choice. You got to do this. Let the shit hit the fan. Let it fall where it may. You don't have a choice. We elected you to be stand-up representatives from us peons who live out there and pay our taxes. So go for it.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Council, what's your pleasure?
We have a motion and a
Yep.
second.
And so we have a motion and a second. Do you have any questions, comments, final thoughts, parting thoughts?
Just thank everybody for their thoughtful comments.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carr?
I would have to go first, right?
I'll go first.
Yeah, I'll go first.
No, I'm going to vote no.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
No.
Councilman Forbes?
Iowa, same comment.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Passes 5-2.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, are we at item 9 now? We're going to jump back to, okay, and that's.
Got a lot done.
Yep, we did, absolutely. The first reading and public hearing of the following ordinance, and public comment is allowed here.
That's good, this is non-controversial. An ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida relating to elections to provide for general elections of municipal officers to be held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, on even-numbered years beginning in November 2020 for Districts 2, 4, and 5, and the mayoral seat, and November 2022 for Districts 1, 3, and 5, well, that's a typo, to coincide with the state and federal elections, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification of the charter provision, Scrivener's errors, and inclusion in the code, and an effective date.
Move to move forward.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
Yes.
Peter?
Yeah. Greg, go ahead.
I guess my thing is we don't need to rush. This year, it's already on the, I just don't see why we need to rush to do it. We've got a charter review committee. We've had a charter review personnel here and said, hey, let us at least look at it, and that's what it's for. We're reviewing the charter, we're changing the charter. If there's anything that should be brought to the public, it should be this. This is going to lengthen some of our terms by 8 years.
8 months.
8 months, I'm sorry, not 8 years, 8 months. And I just, what if we can change the charter at a whim like this, and, I remember when I was running for this seat, Councilman Slacker wanted to give everybody a raise, and it wasn't even going to affect him, and it was voted. It was, again, bring it to the public. That's what the word was. So, I mean, to change the charter, I think that it should be brought to the members of the public. That's the charter. That's our bylaws. That's our constitution of the way the city was done. It shouldn't be done, just at a 4-3 vote.
Okay, well, I'll just point out that this won't actually change the charter. All we'll do is we'll indicate in the charter that we've changed the dates, because the last charter review in 2010 actually allowed the moving of the dates. I think the question that we're all talking about is, were they intended
And I
to
think
move
when
this much?
I was going to say, they intended, the intent probably was to move it weeks, not months,
Correct.
not 8 months.
So I think that's where the charter review will be looking.
And again, to include one is to exclude all others. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at this. I mean, it's our charter. It's no different as we're looking at constitutional amendments. This is our little small constitution of Bonita Springs, and we've got to hold it sacred. I mean, if that's the case, why are we having a review committee to look at it every so often? We can just change it at any whim. Write an ordinance, have two meetings, and stroke of a pen, it's done. So for something especially this important, I mean, and I don't nobody lynch me up on this one, but what's next? Changing the height? I mean, that's in a comp plan and in the thing. Go from 75 to 105. We can do that in 2 meetings. These are things that we need to hold dear to us and bring it to the public.
Peter and then Amy.
Well, go ahead, Amy.
No, first of all, I want to say, I don't know if the rest of you got all these emails,
Yes.
but I assume they copied everybody, but I got a number of them personally. And I appreciate all the effort of the people who researched this and brought up things that I voted against it the first time, but I didn't even think of some of the things that were presented to us. So I appreciate the political action of individuals and their research. It was really helpful because the council can't always figure everything out. We have certain views, and I really want to thank everybody for stepping forward on it. I still agree that this is not a good thing to do, certainly at this time. We can debate whether it should go to the charter revision, but that was sort of an idea that I have, and I do think that people should vote on it. I think there is a reason why we have our elections and have been in the spring for many, many years, is that because we do want to engage the community on local issues, and I agree with so many of the things that people have brought up. So I'm going to vote against this. Typically, I am in favor of moving it to the second reading so that we can have a full discussion. But in this particular case, because of the things that have been brought up, I'm going to vote against this, and I don't want to move it forward either.
Great, thanks. Pete?
So the election supervisor came before us with facts that showed we might have a problem in 4 years. We might have a problem in 4 years. He was clear the turnout for the mayoral election is just fine. It's strong. He was clear we don't pay for that. And on the back of that, some people decided that they're going to upend a process that's been in place for almost 20 years, almost as long as the city's been around, on the basis of something in 2022. The mayoral election is in 2020. We've always had a strong turnout for that. and it doesn't cost us anything. We had people at this last meeting on this dais saying we're going to save money. We're not saving a nickel. It costs us nothing to have the election in March. I'll repeat that. It costs us nothing to have the election in March. So, what do we have in March and what do we have in January when things have moved back and forth? We have public forums, we have debates, newspapers have scheduled debates, we have coffee klatches all around town. That is going to go the way of the cuckoo bird when this is moved to November. What did we have in the last mayoral election? Unidentified, dark money came in support of a candidate, spent apparently, I guess, tens of thousands of dollars. What are we going to have in November? A lot more of that, in contrast to fewer real communication with the voters. Because as was pointed out, November puts our election in the middle of hurricane season. No one's here. Locals aren't here in the months before that. So what we're going to have is opening the door to big money, unidentified, coming in and blasting this place with postcards. That's the trade that we're bargaining here for in the space of 2 meetings. I think the answer is pretty clear. It's not a 2020 problem. If it is a problem, it's a 2022 problem. We have a charter review committee. This is properly a charter question. So why not simply have the voters decide, assuming the charter review committee makes that recommendation and assuming this city council makes the recommendation? It's plenty of time for the year 2022. Plenty of time. And I'll make one brief comment about the so-called Laura Carr 2022. There was hardly any competition in that race. The more important thing about the off-year elections are we have no competition. That's why we don't have any turnout. Amy, District 1 had no competition. District 5, there was no competition. No one voted. Why? There was no competition. But I would plead with my council members, this is, it has been in the charter. It got moved back and forth in the charter to go from March to January to March. That record is clear in the years before 2010. And then I think, as Greg said, in 2010, they amended it to say the term shall be, always was, 4 years, not 4 years and 8 months, as adjusted by the election date. That was a clear reference to that January to March moving back and forth. Last point is, I honestly don't know how my fellow council members can extend their term for 8 months without going to the people. When we had, and Peter, you brought this up, the term limit point, that went to the people. Here, we're extending the term limit. Somebody has made the point here today that, what does that do, among other things? In an unelected period, this council is going to be deciding the city budget, right? From March right through to the end of October. If anything screams for the voters of Bonita should decide it, this does. And of all things, we've got a charter review committee up and running. So I would plead with at least one of those who voted last time to vote no on this and, in my view, do the right thing. Send it to charter review. There are a lot of moving parts in this. Let them consider, let them make a recommendation, and then let the people of Bonita Springs decide. So, thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Fred?
First of all, whether we have the election in November or we have it stay with the course of March, all this so-called money that was spent in March. So if it was spent in March with no legal challenge, which there wasn't any illegal things done, then having it in November, I don't see any comment on that. The second thing is the charter, and there's a lot of people that believe it's not legal, does set a limit what everyone that runs for council or the mayor can spend. Doesn't say you can't raise more money, but you can't spend more than a certain amount. And I don't propose to challenge that. I don't think it's legal, but I would respect that. I'm all about getting the maximum turnout. We will have a lower turnout than normal for a big percentage of the voting population in March because it will be a non-contested presidential primary. Now go back to 2016. It was a hotly contested primary. Hotly, if you remember. And it may not have come out the way everybody voted. I don't even think it did for me, but it came out. So I'm staying with the course.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Greg.
If I can just say something. I know I already spoke once on this matter, so please indulge me just for 2 minutes if at best. Voter turnout, I think when the supervisor of election here, he made the comment that a lot of people nowadays are doing mail-in ballots. So realistically, what does that matter? If you mail in March or you mail in November, it's going to be the same turnout. What he was referring to is the people who are, let's be honest, the old-fashioned ones that wait till November 6th and go in there and pull the lever. If they're passionate about what they believe in, they're going to do it. They're either going to go in by mail-in ballot or they're going to go there and do it. I just think, as a member of the public have said it, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Today we had 9 people come in and speak in favor of not doing this, to leave it the way it was. And now, you know, these are people that came here, took the time out today to come here and speak on this matter. You know, we have decided things, whether it be medical marijuana or whatever, we've decided against tougher things than that, with less people voting, coming up to the diocese or to address us, we've made harder decisions or decisions based on less people. We've got 9 people that came in here to speak not to do this. And to me, and the emails that Amy and that all of us have gotten, so, you know, this isn't something to take lightly. So I just think, again, that at the very least, bring it to the public. I say vote it down, leave it the way it is, because it's not broken. Nothing's broken on it. So let's leave it the way it is. But if we do want to bring it to the public, let's bring it to the public. Have it set for 2022. It's not an issue in 2020. Let's do it to 2022.
Council, other comments or questions?
Only if the vote, if one of the other switches, I'm going to propose that it actually does go to the Charter Review Committee and be considered and then go to the public for them to decide.
Okay. Mike, did you have something? I couldn't tell.
Well, to the point of the voter turnout, that includes mail-in ballots. So on 1, 3, and 5, that's including everything, early voting on the day of and mail-ins. And we always have a very low turnout because it's the only thing on the ballot usually. This last time around, there was only 1 race, but even when, you know, I had a race 4 years prior, it was still a low turnout percentage-wise. So I think it's better moving it to November, hopefully get better turnout. The other issue is with the primaries, as was mentioned, if you get, you know, one party that doesn't have a primary, that's going to affect how many people come out to vote. So,
well, the people sorry, Mike.
And that can go either way. I mean, this year it happens to be one party. In, you know, well, it'd be 8 years. It'd be, you know, possibly another party that doesn't have a primary. But I think just so everybody's coming out to vote, you know, both parties and independents, everybody's there in November. So I think it's better having it in November.
So to be clear, we have nonpartisan elections in this town, and the issues, somebody else made this point today, are truly nonpartisan. What we're talking about in terms of stormwater, whatever, they really are nonpartisan. If you want proof of it, we had a mayor, it can be said now, he's not running again, he's term limited, was an out, flat out Democrat, well known. He won in a landslide when the only people showing up in March were Republicans. The only other people on the ballot were McCain, Romney, and et cetera. If that doesn't prove this is nonpartisan, I don't know what does, and it should stay that way.
And I wasn't arguing that it's partisan. I was just saying that one party may not feel that they need to come out and vote. They may not even know they have to come out and vote, because especially with absentee ballots, you have to request them ahead of time. So a lot of people may not know that they have to be voting on the mayor or any of our council spots.
Yeah, it's clear that,
Amy,
you know,
and then
this,
Fred.
this discussion about participation is flawed because we don't have total information. And in fact, one of the communications that I got, who looked at voting down the ticket, that as much as 78% of the people do not vote the bottom part of the ballot. So even if you had a participation of 50%, if they don't vote for everything, then it doesn't help you to be on at a time where you have more people voting in total. And I do think that one of the most important things is the ability for us to focus on local issues without the distractions of all these other things that we're talking about. Because who's going to talk about us when they're going to talk about, you know, immigration or, you know, all the things that we're all going nuts over right now? We need to talk about us. We need to talk about our candidates and what they're going to do for our city and how they're going to interact with. And I think that that is the most important reason why we should maintain it in March. And I think that must have been in the minds of the original people that put it in our charter, because they wanted that focus on the local thing. And I think that's what we should go forward with. And I agree, it's not broken, so why break it? And let's figure out what happens in March. We don't have to pay anything, and we can have a long discussion. And if the people think for some reason they want to save, you know, a couple of $10,000 every so often because they're not getting the participation, then that's up to them to decide. But I don't see that we ought to, in fairness, do it ourselves.
And
at this
actually, as
point.
part of that discussion, if it went to charter review, you never know. Maybe they would suggest moving the other three at the same time, not stagger. I mean, whatever.
Right. I mean, all kinds of.
That's all a reason why this should go to charter review and go to the people. No, enough said.
Fred?
I think that to compare what happened in the election, the last election of Ben Nelson, it's apples and oranges. The person that was running against him had barely lived in Bonita about a year and a half, was not known, and all that all contributed to it. I think that I would entertain this for those that are so confident that this is wrong. We go ahead with the mayoral election November. On the damn ballot, we put, do you want to continue this? And see what happens. And I'll bet you that when the people know all the facts, they'll vote it in to go with November again.
Further comments or questions?
Point, counterpoint?
Sure.
Well, let's put where they want to go with the 2022 on the November ballot.
Right. Well,
Don't do the
elections
mayoral
thereafter.
one, just do that one in the November one, when the best voter turnout. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Simmons?
Oh, wait, whoa. Time out. Public comment. My goodness, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, folks. Anybody members of the public that would like to speak on this issue, please come forward at this time. Sorry about that. Derek, that's your job, buddy. Come on.
He's sick, he's been sick.
Yeah, he's sick.
Again, my name is Barbara Ogle, and I have to agree with Ben. I didn't think I was going to become a political activist at this stage either. Again, we didn't elect you for 4 years and 8 months. We elected you for 4 years. I don't think that you need to change it. I spoke at the beginning of this meeting for the reasons that during the summer, people are gone. And if you want to get it out to your neighborhoods, you can get it out to your neighborhoods. That's fine. But again, you have tough decisions to make. And I'd really like to see you make them. But we did not elect you for 4 years and 8 months. And it should be our choice whether or not we have an election in March or we have an election in November. It shouldn't be your choice. It should be our choice. We are the city. You are our representatives. But it should be our voice and our choice. So please think about us, the citizens, before you make this decision and change the election. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Good morning.
Morning. Hi, Mary Beth Boray from Bonita Bay. Again, I will ask, I have not heard anyone say what the reason is that this decision has to be made today. I don't understand what the rush is about this. And given that we have the Charter Review Committee, it seems the appropriate place to do it. It seems that makes the most sense. But again, I have not heard a single person on the council address the issue of why this needs to be done today. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, there's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Could we clarify what we're voting on? 'Cause
This is
there's
just
been
a
a
first
bunch
To
of-
advance it to a second reading.
To move it to
Right.
November.
To move.
To move it
Right,
to November.
to November, then this is to advance it to a second reading.
Perfect, thank
Okay, thank you. Okay, do you need, Derek, any more clarification than that, Laura? Okay, okay. There's been a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
No?
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
No.
Councilman DeWitt?
No.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Okay,
Passes 4-3.
wonderful. Thank you. Okay, we are city attorney's items. Item 11, no, I'm sorry, I skipped over 10. I've been bouncing back here. It's now public comment time for anything. Anybody that would like to make a comment at this time, please come forward. Hello there, Kathy McGrath.
Hello there, Mayor Peter.
How you doing?
For the record, Kathy McGrath, this has been such an exciting meeting with meaningful discussion, and I am so pleased and excited that we have that young group sitting right there, the Owls. What a perfect time for them to hear how government works. And the fact that they're a member of a group is a positive feeling for me, because let's face it, they're our future generation. They're our future leaders. So to the teacher, congratulations, and thank you for bringing them.
Can I interrupt you just for a second?
you may.
Would you give them another round of
Yay.
applause? So happy that you're here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The one thing I wanted to discuss was under City Manager's item C. It's about the tenants at the Wonder Gardens. I think you all remember I brought this up at a previous meeting because people say to me, you know, what's going on? And I noticed, and I read the green sheet, obviously. I had read previously the ones who had proposed moving in there. And obviously, staff could not confirm that they had sufficient money. And I'm assuming, I read through their proposals, they all said that they would bring it up to code. But obviously, there's too much that has to be done. And staff obviously felt that the ones proposing to move in there didn't have sufficient money. So I believe what the suggestion is, staff is recommending that the city reject all without prejudice. And they all looked exciting. I didn't have a favorite. I didn't come here to talk about that. But they want you to consider allocating funding for the required ADA and city code related renovations. And if this is city's property, and if this is what we need to get a great, I don't know how you want to put it, business, I would think, because this is what we all want, something that's going to attract people to come downtown. And let's face it, things are moving down there, and they're going to keep moving. So I would recommend or ask you to consider, whatever staff is recommending to you, please do it. But let's get a great tenant down there, okay? And I want to congratulate again the winners. I mean, it's a little bit late after Holiday in the Park, but to Heaven Sent and Right at Home and Buffalo Chips for winning. And let me tell you something. I drove up and down, roundabouts and all, ladies and gentlemen, and during the holidays, and it was beautiful. And there was absolutely no problem driving there. And I invite you next year, I'll remind you when the time comes. For all of you, I always keep saying, crawl out of your little cocoons there in your little gated communities and come down and see how things are going, because I imagine by December, it's going to be even better than it is now. So thank you very much, and it's been a very meaningful meeting.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you so much. Other members of the public? Ed, good morning.
Good morning to all of you. We're on the stormwater issue. I guess I'm requesting some information. I've been informed that there's a 72-inch stormwater drain on Bonita Grande Road running from north to south underneath Quail West and into Collier County. I've been, maybe I'm wrong, but I've been told that's there, and I've been told that that has the capacity to make a major impact to our flooding. Mr. Forbes shakes his head that it's not there.
Ed, please finish your comments, and then I'm going to let
Okay,
Congressman Forbes speak. So
okay.
please, yeah, Congressman. Congressman Forbes, Councilman Forbes. It's the C. See, we're doing those 4 Cs.
Okay.
What?
I had mentioned this to Arlene Hunter at a meeting recently, and I think she did mention she would find out if this was true or not. Okay, that's my question. If you could help me, someone on the council, I appreciate it very much.
I appreciate those comments. And it's a bit out of order, but I'm going to let Councilman Forbes speak.
Actually, Eddie he's right on a major part of it, but incorrect. That pipe that you're talking about was installed initially by Quail West. It drained all of Quail West when it was first built. Quail West and it drains this is the big difference. It drains directly as those other 3 72-inch pipes do, that goes under Bonita Beach Road on the diagonal, goes to the Imperial River. The Quail West has abandoned that pipe being used to drain their water, and they're now shipping it all south. So that pipe simply takes whatever stormwater runoff from the Bonita Grande, which isn't a whole lot, but that's what primarily goes in the pipe. It is possible that you could, if you get South Florida Water Management's permission, drain some water out of Worthington into it, but it does not go south. And I wouldn't be optimistic they would let you, but they might. You never know.
And I just want to dive in here for a second and say there were a lot of overtures made to the last council, the South Florida Water Management District, I should say. A lot of overtures, a lot of meetings by myself and others, people going to the East Coast, people meeting with the executive director, and I can say without a doubt, we'll see if time proves me right. I feel very optimistic with Governor DeSantis with this new South Florida Water Management District. A yet to be named executive director, or maybe I missed that point. There will be more overtures to this new district, Ed, and I would ask that you please take that message back to East Bonita, because we hear you loud and clear, my friend.
Yeah,
Yes, Fred.
And I want to add 2 more things. We have the one and only DeSantis new appointee for that board coming to Bonita Springs on March the 7th at the Barefoot Boat Club that you may want to come to.
Yes. The new member, Chauncey Goss, will be in town next month to discuss these issues.
Also, I don't want to leave you with the impression I was casting dispersions on Worthington. I just said I thought more would show up. I do think that many don't realize that this does tie into the flooding. If this does go forward and we're lucky enough to get it as a referendum, I will make it my purpose to come to Worthington many times to explain it, hopefully to a membership meeting or 2, as to why you need to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Thank you for that sidebar.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Whittemore again. Reading through the list and spending $67,000 to $70,000 to bring that little restaurant up to code by Wonder Gardens seems like a no-brainer. Look how much we spent to move Dixie Moon. It's still sitting there. So I think the city would get that back in rent from whoever they rent it to in a matter of a blink of an eye. So not to do that would be a sin. And the second thought, I want to thank you finally for fixing the fountain by the Lyles Hotel. We've gone by there. They were there all day yesterday, and it looks fabulous. So thank you for keeping downtown beautiful.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, I'm great. So my name is Jean Roskowski, and I'm a part of Discovery Day Academy. This is my first time ever speaking in front of a group of people like this, so I'm so sorry if I'm nervous. My father was a county commissioner in Highlands County for 12 years, so that's something I regret not knowing more about his life. So this is very interesting to me. Our school is a project-based school, and how we get our social studies and sciences is through projects. And so our 6th and 7th graders are currently learning about our government. And we also like to partner with our community to help with any type of issues or anything like that. And so my question is for any of you or anyone in the audience, if there's something that is an issue that you think our school could help with, or our students can research and be a partner with you, that would be something that we would be interested in doing. So that's just something I would like to put out there and let you know that we would love to be a part of your community.
Thank you very much, and if you could just please make sure we have your contact information with what, thank you very much. And once again, everybody, thank you for being here. You are our leaders of tomorrow, so thank you for being here. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the city attorney's items.
Which you've already addressed my item, which was the interlocal agreement.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Okay, Derek, thank you. City manager's items, Arlene.
For the first item, I'm going to ask John Dahmer to come forward. In reviewing some of our permittings with dock regulations, there are some inconsistencies within the existing land development code, and we're looking for some direction from the council as far as possibly moving forward with some revisions that might be needed.
Okay, thank you. John Dahmer.
Morning, Mr. Mayor, Council. This will be very brief. It's come to our attention over the past year or so that portions of our dock code are just simply inadequate. It has remained largely intact since it was adopted directly from Lee County when the city incorporated, and a lot has changed both in terms of what people are asking for in docks and also what how people are constructing docks. So these are the general areas that we are looking to make modifications to. We have definitions that just simply aren't there, that are now commonplace in the dock industry. Location standards are not up to snuff. We don't have a statement that says you have to choose either a observation deck or a dock. And dimensional standards, especially for specific types of locations in waterways, canals with 90-degree angles, those type of things. Who has a dock? Where is it located? We don't have clear direction or permitting standards. And also our seawall standards are outdated. So if it is council's will and your desire, we would like to take that direction or whatever direction you give us today, prepare a draft. We want to incorporate the dock building industry and the environmental industry, make sure that what we're doing is consistent from their perspectives as well. Bring it back to the local planning agency for their determination as to whether it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, and then you have your 2 readings for your either acceptance or not acceptance. So I know this was very brief, but this is one of those areas where we have kind of been struggling through for a while, and it's reached the point where we need to make these changes. And I know that there's been a lot of top priorities lately, so that's why it's kind of been pushed back this far. But as your staff member, I believe it's time we took a look at this.
Okay. Thank you. Fred?
Yeah, I'd like to make 2 suggestions. One is when you come back with we call it the skeleton of what you're going to propose, can you tell us what some of the other communities that have good reputations and this kind of stuff, what their standards are? And secondly, I would like to think that we can develop this without having to have our land use special counsel go spend hours and hours on it. We ought to get a finished product, use Derek a little bit, and then send it to him as opposed to having them build it back up, because they would have to do all the research and all that.
In the effort of complete transparency, we've already researched codes throughout the state that we have considered areas that
good.
either have good aspects or a solid code. And the reason why we've stuck to the state of Florida mainly is because they have the same environmental regulations that we do and the same
Right.
same situations that we do. Once you go outside of the state, there's a shift that sometimes you can't take account for.
Right. Good.
John, I think, from what I understand of why you're bringing this forward today, is because what happens when you start having infrastructure already built up, and then you're left with little pieces of the shoreline that people want to do something to, and it's already had stuff all along it, that it creates all kinds of problems if you don't have regulations. And putting it, docks and those kinds of things in that kinds of environments are difficult. And I personally think that we might need our special land use council to give us advice there, because then you're really trampling on people's property rights, both on the built environment. So it's a little harder in some ways when you're in that kind of situation. So I think we should go forward with this, and we'll rely on your expertise and decision of whether you need help with it or don't need help with it. But I think it's critical, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Yes, ma'am, and we would like to put the draft together and then present the draft to Special Land Use Council for their final blessing, as opposed to taking hours and hours of them on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want a motion or just go ahead?
Go ahead.
Direction.
I think we received the direction, because the next item would then be the motion after that, when we bring the draft to you.
Sure. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Arlene?
The next item we have before you, we previously brought before council the bamboo bridge, wooden pedestrian bridge, and there were some remaining questions. Carly Sanseverino has had direct contact with DEP. We've done some outreach to Army Corps of Engineers and has been directly contacting FEMA. At this time, we've confirmed that FEMA would replace the bridge in the existing footprint at an ADA required improvements at $156,000. They would not confirm that we would be eligible to place it at a different location. We have talked further upriver by Feltz Avenue. The final response was that it could possibly put that approved funding in jeopardy, because it would require, should have been discussed at the time of the original inspection, is what we're hearing back. We have had DPZ look at the location of the bridge and its current state, and their recommendation for a more cohesive development plan would have it placed closer to Feltz Avenue, further away from the existing boardwalk, to provide for better development in the future, and also to leave a more open plan. So at this point, with the fact that we could not move the footprint with FEMA is the direction we're hearing, we would recommend that we just remove the bridge at this time and allow it to be an opportunity for future development as we put the RFP out for bamboo, and see that the future developer would have the opportunity to apply to replace the bridge. They would have to get all the appropriate permitting from DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers, and that is a lengthy process as well.
Can I ask a question about how far is it over to Feltz from there? It's not very far at all, right?
Less than a quarter mile, maybe?
Oh, much less than that.
It's the same parcel.
Same parcel. I'm just wondering, and I don't know, volunteer Laura or whatever, but if somebody can reach out to our congressman's office on this, because it seems awfully bureaucratic to me that FEMA would say, we'll pay, or whatever, what is it, 80%? We'll pay to have it here, but you know, on the same piece of property where it's much better aligned, we're not going to pay. It may be something where, I mean, I would reach out or defer to whoever wants to do it on council, to the congressman's office to talk to FEMA. I know when Kurt Clausen was in, there were FEMA issues that, you know, much bigger FEMA issues that they dealt with down in Collier County. So I don't think it's an inappropriate ask. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, would that make, okay, great. And Fred, I'm sorry. Oh, Fred?
Yeah, I'll volunteer to make contact, and I
Well,
know
no, excuse me.
somebody else can
I
too.
volunteered. I was deferring to Laura because
Oh.
she may have a
Oh, okay.
particular relationship.
Well, then we'll
So-
have a twofer, because I know somebody there too. But anyway.
Oh, you're going to do it anyhow?
Yes, I will. So,
Fred?
why don't we investigate one other thing? I've been told that if you at least leave portions of the bridge intact, then they'll allow you to rebuild it at a later time. Is that a possibility?
But I don't think we want to.
Do you mean leave the pilings in place and just remove the boardwalk part?
I said, find out what the minimum is we have to leave intact or where it could be rebuilt at a future point.
It has to do with the footprint, like the action, where the pilings go into the river. If we were going to replace them, you have to do it within the same
Right.
project, like immediately replace them.
Okay.
And to clarify your point, Councilman O'Flynn, the reason that it would jeopardize the funding is because the original scope of the project says replace in the existing footprint. So if we were to alter that now, it would jeopardize funding for all of the Parks and Rec projects that
And
are
I understand
currently
the bureaucratic
proposed.
point. Right. I understand it.
Right.
If we did move forward with trying to pursue rebuilding the existing bridge, we will have to ask for an extension from FEMA as well for the March deadline.
The real question is, can we get some help on this to crack through the bureaucracy? That's all. I know there are various rules where the sky is going to fall if you move. So I understand that. So I'm sure that's not going to happen. The question is, can we possibly, I don't know, get some help?
Well, my question is, do we want to rebuild it at that place?
At
That it-
Feltz?
No, at where it currently is. I mean, I think that's the first decision that we want to make, and I think the
Well, it's true.
recommendation of the staff is not to rebuild it there.
Right.
All right? And then these other things we can explore. So, I mean, if somebody thinks we should pursue rebuilding it where it currently is, then we should make that idea known. My position is we shouldn't rebuild it there.
You should.
We should not.
Oh, me
And
neither.
if where it currently is, that's not where it ought to be.
Right.
Because it divides up the property.
I
and,
assumed
you
we were of that view because
know.
of previous conversations.
Okay,
but-
so now, if we can agree to that as a council, then if we want to pursue the possibility of moving it closer to Phelps, I'm in agreement with anything we can to try to do it and try to get money for it. But if we have a developer that comes in, then they would be responsible for putting the bridge in if they want it. They may not even want a bridge.
At the current place.
know.
Or
Or
wherever,
any bridge, or they
wherever.
might want to do it a different way,
Right.
you know? So totally different from where we have there.
That was the other comment made by DPZ. Without the bridge, then you have a blank slate to
Correct.
create wherever's most appropriate with that development.
But Feltz is a logical connection. It was one that was suggested and talked about in connection with the whole downtown renewal
Correct.
project. And it is a city street. And actually, I think technically there is on the north end adjacent to, I don't know if it matters, because we own Bamboo anyhow, but I think adjacent to it, there's a city right-of-way as well. And I remember when Janet Martin was on council, she was pushing, and I thought it made a lot of sense, to make that connection for bike connectivity, for safe bike connectivity. So I think there's all kinds of good talking points about this.
Yeah, and I think this, and I applaud you, staff, for bringing this forward. I mean, it's something that needs to be brought forward, but I look forward to the discussion, and I guess I just am Derek, and I'll put you on the spot with this. How much flexibility is there? You know, I mean, do we need, let's just say, I'll just say on the south side of the Imperial River, if we leave the ramp walking up there, how much of it has to be original?
You know, and there's lots of litigation around the state on this issue.
Right.
Carly and I have looked at this. It's particularly because this is a grant.
And you can
funding
analyze it from the north side of the river, your
but,
pick.
But the situation really we're dealing with is partially the grant situation, which possibly politically going through the congressman's office, that could get adjusted, where they could reconsider our scope and address those issues. But anything else, you're not going to get a commitment from DEP for a new bridge. They're gonna look at it, they're gonna condition everything else. We look at it as a new application for a submerged lands lease, and we'll look at it when you come in. So what we're trying to do is try to get the funding lined up for a future project, and then that way, at least, when we're talking with DEP, we say, well, we've already got the funding lined up, why wouldn't you let us get that new submerged land lease in this new location? Everyone benefits, you know? So, the big answer is a big I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get, sure.
I just make a motion to have Councilwoman Carr approach the Congressman's office. If she wants to ask some other member of council to do it, that's up to her. I think it's so compelling, and considering the history, to have it there. I don't know if you need a motion on that or not, Peter.
Okay. Do we want a motion on this?
I guess our concern, if for some reason we're unable to move the footprint and move it up to Feltz, what would then be the direction of council? Because we would have to
Take it
apply
down.
for an extension to FEMA.
No, I think, I would suggest that it be taken down and not spend the
Oh,
money.
Sure. I just wanted some clarification on the next steps because we'll be very close with the next, we'll have.
If I might, regardless of the disposition of the future bridge or FEMA.
Right.
You have a bridge that really needs to be taken down.
Oh,
And
okay.
so what
There you go.
I
Take it
think
down.
what we would like is direction that says, regardless of whether it can be extended or not, can we move forward with dismantling the bridge?
I'd bend my motion, in addition to Councilwoman Carr, to take the bridge down.
Second.
Fred?
Well.
Yeah, there's been a motion and a second, further discussion.
From
Fred?
what I've heard, there's actually two people that need to be contacted. Our congressman, the governor, and actually you could throw in Rick Scott. And those of us that have contacts with them, we're all on the same page. We'll all do our little number to try and see if we can move the ball one way or the other on this. Because you need DeSantis if you don't get these other things, or we do, and we want to relocate it, we have to get DEP's position. Who does DEP report to? The governor. And we got a new governor, as you said, a Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Greg?
Just a comment, I guess a comment. So if we take this down, it's never going to be built there again, is that what we're saying? So we're foregoing a bridge there.
No.
No, we might
Well-
have to pay.
You might have to reapply. and
That's
you
what I
might
mean,
have
it's
to
2 or
go
3
through this
years to get it
process.
reapplied.
The bridge collected storm debris after the flooding issue. So if I seem a little personal about it,
Yeah.
it is.
You're allowed.
We've widened the pedestrian facility with the 41 bridge, so we've made a better pedestrian facility than used to be there. It does have a lot of folks that historically used it. It is not to ADA standards. It really needs to come
Well,
down.
I don't
regardless.
disagree with bringing it down, and here's where my thought is right now, is bring it down, and then, let's put it bluntly, let the new owner worry about it. Let them apply for the permit and wait to 2 or 3 years. Why should that be on the city's back to apply, go to DEP, may or may not get it? Because right now, you can't advertise it, hey, we've got a footbridge that connects the two parcels, because we don't. And you don't know if we're ever going to get it, to be honest. There's no guarantee that if we move that upstream 500 feet, 1,000 feet, that we will ever get it back again. And I'll refer back to, and I think Derek, we talked about it, out in Pine Island Sound with the houses out there. Once those pilings came out of the water, you're never getting it back. You're highly unlikely to get it back.
Right.
And that's my only fear, that if down the road, we're going to advertise, hey, you're connected parcels. They're not connected. And I've talked to Arlene a little bit about it. Even if you went with a spandable bridge where you're not on the footprint, you still may have to go to DEP because of the construction and because of what you're going to connect to the left and the right. I'm just, buyer beware.
Greg, no,
That's all
I
I'm
understand.
saying.
We're balancing safety issues here with the realities of replacing it.
What are you
at some-
suggesting, Greg?
I don't know. To be honest,
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
sure.
I guess my gut would be to tear it down and rebuild it with the funds that we're going to get from FEMA. Apply for the thing. It may not be in the right location, but is the connectivity worth it or not? Worth having it or
think it
not?
is.
That's what I'm saying. So, I think, and Carly or Matt or Arlene, do we have a less likely shot? Let's say we use the FEMA money to rebuild it, and they've already kind of leaned that we can build it to ADA specifications, so it will be up to code in the current location. What would be the likelihood of us then, at that point, applying for another bridge, 500 yards upstream, and with the condition that if we get this one, we'll tear that one down at the time?
And let me ask this, and I'm, Matt,
That way at least
just,
we can vet the
just
connectivity.
bite your tongue for a second, and I'm not trying to be cute or glib here. But what if we leave the entranceway, the first couple of steps, right, to the bridge, tear it on either side of the river, leave those, tear down the bridge, but leave the original entryway, north and south? Or is that not then do we avoid any of these reapplying and re-permitting and not the original bridge, not the original footprint? And if we, you know what I'm saying, just
Yeah,
leave the first couple
well-
of steps on either side and tear down the bridge,
Yeah,
the rest of it.
This all changed a little bit back in 2012, and this mainly had to do with the structures out in Pine Island Sound. The DEP had a whole regulatory regime for grandfather structures. They repealed that, and they made some changes in the statute that are very generic. It's like a single paragraph that says something to the effect of, if you were a historic structure, and so there's a lot of ifs involved. If you maintained it, and if it was in existence in 1990, which this would be. But if you fail to repair it and you fail to maintain it, it will allow you to keep it there in perpetuity, but if you fail to maintain it, they can pull it away from you anyway. So I would read that language to say that unless we want to rebuild it and keep it as is, that we're on shaky ground legally to get a guarantee of anything.
Well, there's a
I-
bigger,
I-
sorry.
No, I just say, my opinion is that, what are we giving up? We're giving up a bridge that's not in the right place, and if you do ADA, it's going to be 200 feet or something long, so think about 200 feet in that area. So what are we giving up? We don't want that bridge there. It's not suitable for the thing. And if we are lucky and fortunate and determined and persistent enough, we possibly will get another bridge in an area which is an addition to the property rather than a detriment. So let's stop worrying about it. It needs to come down because of the safety things. Take it down, and then we'll proceed to try to get whatever we have to do to get a bridge built where we want it, in a style that we want it, that's supported by some kind of logical planning process. So I think we're making too much of this. Do we want that bridge there? Why is it there? What good is it? And if it's bad, let's just take it down. And
I don't disagree with you, Amy. I guess I'm saying is,
We do.
well, I am, because we keep saying, do we want? This is gonna be someone else's problem when they buy that parcel. Let them deal with it. So let's take it down, save the money, but buyer beware that we cannot then sell it as these two parts are connected.
I'm fine with that,
Oh,
Greg. I mean,
that's all I'm saying.
I'm really fine. I mean, you're going to the second part. We can have another discussion on whether we should take the responsibility
Right.
for putting the bridge in a more suitable place. That's a whole different discussion. But right here, I don't see why we want that bridge there, even if we rebuild it. It's the wrong bridge in the wrong spot. So we can decide whether we want to pursue these other things, get a new permit, get some funding. That's a whole different discussion. But I think the decision today is rather simple. Stantec.
I guess my last comment is that we or the new people may never get it back. We have one now. That's my only concern.
We do have the Island Park Bridge. I mean, that went in. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy,
Yeah.
you know.
No, it's not gonna be.
There's
I
two
just
there.
go-
There's two there.
And I just know that from the fire district, when we were looking at
Right.
just putting a boat lift in, we wanted to go 2 extra feet. It was a 2-year permit wait through DEP. And I just think that it's, you may or may not get it back. That's all.
Nope, no, that's a very good point. Fred and then Matt.
Yeah, my point's real simple. I agree the bridge is in the wrong place, and we would want to get it down. I think that Laura and any other of us that happen to have contacts have a weaker hand if we have already voted and take the bridge down when we're asking them after the fact. Because right now, the bridge is there, and I think you're better off at least to see how that plays out. You're going to know in a couple months. I don't see 2 months as a deal breaker.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So you would
Does
need
that
to-
council, what do you think?
Well, I think you put that, I think you kind of put that in your motion.
Right.
That you said, hey, if we don't get the funding, then let's tear it down.
Right.
Or we go.
Or you don't get the
You don't
nod.
get the help we're asking.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the safety issues.
Well, they can
and,
put it.
Well, we're gonna point out a couple things. One, we have 2 weeks to decide whether we're gonna take it down. We're seeking extension. The extension's not guaranteed. Another issue that Carly reminded me of is our current lease requires that we maintain the property in good condition, which I'd say that right now it isn't. So we don't also want to be committing ourselves to rehabbing a bridge that nobody wants. So we've got a lot of issues here. I think rhetorically, I agree with Councilman Forbes that it does sound like you'd be weakening your position by taking it down, but I think you can counter that by indicating that we had a bridge. It, historically, it had been there for a long time. We had to take it down for public safety reasons.
Blame it on the fire department.
Matt?
What's that?
Blame it on the fire department.
Blame it on the fire department.
I would just echo what Derek said it better than I would. You have a funding deadline. You can look to an extension, but if you assume that extension is not granted for some reason, what's in jeopardy really is the cost of demolition of this bridge. Because if no extension is given, you will not receive federal dollars at 75, or 25 cents on the dollar to tear it down.
All right, well, we have a motion with respect to Councilwoman Carr and tearing it down. Does that sound good?
Good.
All right.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
And Council, I know we had a little bit of conversation on this, but we didn't get to, one of the additional items in the green sheet is, we're asking the council to accept the lowest bid we received to conduct the demo, so.
So moved.
Second. Yep, so moved. Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Okay,
The next item we have before you back in November, the selection committee for the Wonder Gardens Cafe, LOI 1814, had provided three recommendations. At that point, council had directed staff to go back and confirm the financial ability of those companies to be able to provide the needed ADA repairs, as well as there are building code requirements to be addressed. We were unable to confirm that all of those could be addressed, and additionally, we've heard that it's become problematic to have that upfront cost to make those repairs. With the long-term significance of a lease, that would be locking them in for the repayment with that payment up front. We would recommend that we actually reject all the proposals without prejudice, meaning that at any time and any future LOI, they would all be considered if they re-entered the process. And then have staff provide you with an opportunity of the actual direct cost to make the improvements to the structure that would make it able to be rented at market value.
So moved.
Second.
okay. There's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Fred?
Yeah, question, Arlene. If we pass this today and somebody else comes in and says, we're willing to go into a lease and we'll take on that cost, what does that do to us? Because here, let me tell you where I'm coming from. In principle, I agree with this, but in principle, I don't, for this point of view. If the market is telling you that isn't, at least the people who have submitted are saying it's not that good a deal because they can't come up with the money, and maybe there's one or two people out there that would take it on, and that you're better off to do it, because even if we get a long-term lease after putting 75 or 80 or 100 grand in it, the lease is only as good as the business. If the business declares bankruptcy, they're out from under the obligation of lease. I just think that we ought to see if there isn't anybody that we can talk to that would have contacts, that would see if they have restaurant companies that would want to come in there and take care of this. That's what I think.
Well, that's what the RFP is all
Yeah,
about.
so didn't we do that?
LOI is.
And to clarify, you've actually had two sessions of this over a year ago. You had the first one, we had outreach, we had press releases, we reached out to the Downtown Alliance, and then that unfortunately did not come to fruition with that tenant because of the same situation. We then advertised again, did additional outreach, and we did get 5 respondents. And we feel like, staff feels that this has been a challenge even with the, we offered the opportunity for each of these tenants through the process to come and inspect the property, and each of them brought a contractor with them as well. And in the fact that the type of business, when you're looking at mom and pops and restaurants, having that initial upfront money and the improvements have to be made can be problematic. And this would give us a fair playing field for all opportunities. If the code situation was addressed, you could go fair market value, and anyone who doesn't have the financial wherewithal would still have the opportunity to go at a fair rent rate, as far as having to have the upfront money to make those repairs in the beginning.
Yeah, I think if we improve the property up to code, that it will open up things. We should be getting more response than we have, because it is a very limiting kind of thing. So I'd be in favor of going forward with that. And could we have it painted also at the same time?
Refreshed?
I'm sorry, refresh, whatever.
Refreshed. Okay, so there's a motion and there's a second. Is there further discussion? Council? Roll call, please.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye. And
Okay.
I just want to double check the, not that I want to talk about the election again, but it was listed in here twice with one green sheet number. Do we have to vote on it twice, or is it just listed twice?
No, that's an older version of the agenda.
Okay.
Oh.
Thanks.
Okay, Arlene,
That, we've already addressed my last item, so.
you're good there? And I was gonna say, any other comments, or?
That's
Okay,
all this
Matt,
time.
anything?
Nope.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Mayor and council reports. Amy?
None, thank you.
Okay, Greg?
I'm good, sir. You're going to speak on our.
On
what we did,
Tallahassee.
Right, on Tallahassee, right?
Why don't you offer some comments? I think we all should.
Yeah, just to let the council know that myself and Councilman Forbes and Mayor Simmons went to Tallahassee last week. I think it was very productive, eye-opening, to say the least. We met with our delegation and Capital Strategy, Carol Green, and I think it was positive. We got some insight. We've got some work to do. I know myself, and I think the mayor's going back in the middle of March, and I think Councilman Forbes is going back at the end of March also with the League of Cities. I will say that I think it was positive, but I still think we need some work to do. And I'll say on my part, I asked some hard questions about, we all thanked them for what they were doing. But my comment to them was how we want you to promote our ask, our wants. How can we convince you to be as enthusiastic as us? And we tried to do that. I think on some occasions we did. Some of them, they gave us, hey, go do this and do this and do that, and gave us some direction. So hopefully we're doing that either as council persons or as the mayor and Capital Strategies is doing that. We'll see. I do feel, from what we were up there, I do feel good about it. One thing that we did have was only one ask, whereas last year we had 3 or 4 or 5. So this year I feel positive. I got positive feedback, but we'll see April.
Right, exactly. Laura?
Just something, I've gotten a couple of calls, probably just to John Dahmer, but, and emails about the lack of, on Hickory Boulevard pedestrian crossings. There's supposed to be 10, and there's only 5 done, and the bus stops, and people don't know what to do. And even the drivers of the cars don't know what to do, and so it becomes sort of tricky. And I don't know if one would go back to using the bus, because you're just standing there and then you take your chances running across the street. And I know it's county, but is there any way we could help get the 5 done?
Additionally, Matt Feeney has some input from Lee County DOT that they are investigating. I think they are aware of the concern as well about the crosswalks. So it is Lee County roadway, but they are also looking at the opportunity for additional crosswalks at this time. They'll have to report back to us on their findings.
Okay.
And everything I would say would basically follow that, because we would be coordinating with DOT as it's their road.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Matt, does this dovetail into our conversation, or is there something else going on down there that's causing some backups on?
No, actually, that was the phone call this morning, was about that, and I don't have an answer for you.
That's
I'm gonna
okay.
go out and take
That's
a look.
okay.
So,
No, you said it was gonna take a
but
little bit.
We also chatted about that issue, and it sounds like they're gonna do some more further analysis. They're aware, and have been talking to some folks out on Hickory Island.
And it might
I
even
don't
help
know
to
what will
put
come of
those-
it, but they are gonna give it a, more in-depth or drill down
Right.
look
Right.
into it.
But even putting in signs, state law pedestrians have the right of way at the beginning and the end and in the middle, so that at least there would be some sense of safety.
Yeah, people blow through the,
Oh.
We
not
just
everybody,
paint-
but enough.
Yeah.
Even though it's not our road, can we just paint crosswalk?
There are larger issues that that they're looking into
Uh-huh.
to understand what it would take to make those crosswalks.
But we could
That's what the
suggest
discussion's
going to
about.
a temporary solution, you know? And they won't listen to us.
There are safety concerns and engineering drawings that they,
Right.
as far as to take on the responsibility of putting on the crosswalks requires the study.
Great. Okay. Pete?
I guess two things. One is, I think, Matt, you know, the early on comment about dredging, so we get that often, or at least from time to time. If you, among the many things you're doing, had time to draft a short note to us to explain exactly who does what to whom with respect to dredging, are we allowed to do it, whose permit do we need to get, et cetera, I think that would help when we're asked these questions, which come up often. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. The other thing is, on March 18th, there's a breakfast up in Fort Myers that I'm going to go to, Nick Bedos is going to go to. It has to do with the Florida Greenways and Trails and Sun Trail, whatever. And I think what's going to happen is Dale Allen is going to speak at the breakfast, but if anybody would like to come, just, I'll get you the information. Anybody else on council? So,
Thanks, Pete.
yeah.
Mike? I'm good. Mike? Fred?
Yeah, two minor things. One of them is piggyback on what Councilman O'Flynn asked Matt. The people that spoke mentioned two things. They were focused on canals. Is there any difference in what you go through for dredging on a canal? And I just put this in this write-up you're going to give us, between a canal problem with a sandbar and the Imperial River, because that's, I think there is a difference, but I'm not sure. Secondly, it intrigued me by the statement, and I'd like you to check it out, that actually homeowners went in and got a permit, but then when they got it, they didn't get the money or whatever to clean it. So maybe that's another route that we can go to at least get permits. Maybe easier for them to get a permit than maybe for us. I don't know. Just cover that in your thing. The other thing I wanted to do was piggyback on Greg's comments on the visit. Here's what I took away from it. I agree with everything that Greg said, and I certainly commend him for bringing up that he wants them, the sponsors, to sell it, which didn't happen exactly as planned last year. However, here's the rest of what I took away. This is going to be a big ask year. First of all, you got Hurricane Michael, and they're in what do you call it, the head of the line. We should have been in the line last year, but we somehow fell out of the line. Second thing that I got was that there's all kind of people this year asking for water projects. And even though, and the best thing we got going for us is our ask isn't that much, but at 3 different offices, and some of you may not like it, but one of them actually brought it up, and then one of us asked in front of the other, to the 2 other of the key people we saw. I remember, is it Brummel? Rummel? What?
Bob Brummel from
Yeah.
Collier County.
He brought it
Representative.
up. You got whatever the percentage is. That's good. But he says the odds are about this if you do that. If you go up from that to 50%, your odds are much higher. Then I believe it was Dane Eagle, who's the new majority leader, gave similar comments. And the last place that we were at, Rodriguez said the same thing. He says, you got a much better chance with 40% than you had last year. But he did say, everybody said that the subject was discussed with, we have a better chance to get what we're asking for. Now, we're decreasing what we're asking for, but if we end up with a goose egg, it's not a good thing. So I only bring that up Some of you may not like it, but, you know, they're the ones that are saying it. In spite of the fact that some people last year did get grants with a zero match, and it's happened in the past, none of us cast a vote up there. So if you have the guys that cast the votes telling you something, you at least need to know it and listen to it.
So what does that tell you?
It tells us that,
No,
first of all,
no,
there's
no.
a lot of other people that are going to be in line. The buckets are not going to be as big, because the other thing they're going to do, they're going to have a big bill again to fund protection of the schools.
No,
Big bill, and that
my-
money is coming out of the
My
total
question is,
revenue.
what does it tell you when, forget about the state legislature, when somebody says to you, you gotta have this, and then you find out somebody else got it without having this? Tells you something. Let's call it a rhetorical question.
Sure.
But I think what I take away from that, and I still, it was the same conclusion when we had this discussion at the last meeting, is that tells us that Bonita Springs projects are not being prioritized at all. We're just one of the others, you know? And despite all the talk during Irma and following it, where they're going to help us, and we're not alone, and we're going to, you know, do this, that, and the other thing, that talk was just talk. And I think that, in my view, it's worth saying and asking them, what is the policy of our state legislature in cases of crisis and prioritization? Show me how you are prioritizing a city that was hurt pretty badly. We need to ask those questions. I know we have to be nice and encourage them, and we've been having a lot of support and help. But you know, if they're they have sent us the message that we're just one out of 144 cities, and our projects are no better or no worse than the rest of them. Do I think that's fair? No. Are they reneging on what their promises were? Yes. So.
Fred, do you have anything more to add?
Well, yeah, I would add this. Most of the people that are going to make the decisions, you aren't even getting to vote for them, for or against them. You don't get to vote for the majority leader. He's not in our district. We don't get to vote on him. Most of the people in the speaker, we're not casting a vote on that. This is all, whether we like it or not, that's the way the system says. And all I've done is told you what 3 people, 2 of which are ranking people in the leadership, have said. Now, I'm not saying right or wrong, and I'm not drawing any conclusions what it means. I'm just simply being the messenger. Don't kill the messenger.
And I would echo what Greg said and what Fred said. And I guess my only comment, without repeating a lot of information, would be, look, we all know it's onerous to get up to Tallahassee. It's a long drive. It's a couple of days, whatever the schedule is. But I would, and I say this with all, obviously, sincerity, this isn't the Peter, Fred, and Greg show up there in Tallahassee. I would implore the other 4 members of City Council who can't get to Tallahassee for one reason or another to reach out to every member in Southwest Florida and meet with them locally. Then you have 7 members of the council rowing the boat in the same direction. They're hearing from everybody. You make a personal connection. You've met with them. You know, you're not saying, what are we getting, what are we getting, and continuing to throw bombs. We're meeting them and forging relationships that some of you may or may not have, and quite frankly, at this point, you know, you see the process as it's happened, but I would implore 7 members of this 7-member board to meet with the members from Southwest Florida and anybody else in the state of Florida that's a state rep or a state senator. Meet with them locally, because like I said, I understand a million times over, getting to Tallahassee is not at all convenient or at all quick. So I would plead with the other 4 members who aren't able to get up to Tallahassee to please meet with the members here locally.
Well, Mayor, in fact, that was our mission. We had already articulated that strategy, and it was supposed to be orchestrated in a way that we would go to the local offices and do that. And it was, I believe it was supposed to be orchestrated by our lobbyist, and it didn't happen. Part of it was because all the calendars all got messed up already. And I, for one, you know, am very much in favor of that, because I personally believe You're much better off going, even if you go to Tallahassee, it's better to go when you're the only person going there and not every other city in the state of Florida goes. So open days, I don't think personally would be effective. So when you have a one-on-one with them, it's got to be more effective.
Right.
And I think we need to organize our political action. You know, we need to have our talking points, we need to go and build those relationships and go forward.
Right. No, I agree, Amy. And Arlene and Matt, if you could follow up with Carol and Ashley to please help members that want to participate
So can
locally
I,
or any other place.
Follow on in that.
Yeah, of course.
I think the coordination is highly important,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just, you know, what's one person saying to Ray Rodriguez, what's another person is saying to Ray Rodriguez. I think it's very important, and Peter, whoever's going to lead it, you, Greg, whomever, in terms of these are our talking points. These are our specific talking points.
Yes.
And when they say this is what we say. Because otherwise, I mean, I think we all know our local legislators, but I really do think it's important that it's led and coordinated.
Yes.
The other point I'd make is, and I thank you guys for traveling to Tallahassee. It's not a but or an and, it's just an observation, all right? Which is, I was talking to guys in Estero, you know, when they turned on a dime and they got their city incorporated. Do you know how many trips they took to Tallahassee? None. So I think it's to the point that, and I'm not saying you shouldn't go to Tallahassee, all right, but they took none to Tallahassee. And it's to the point, I think, that Greg started out very kind of politely making about the encouragement that, and I'm not an expert in this, I'm just looking at it, all right? And I don't know the state Senate leader, but I can see that there were water projects in our area where I'm assuming that individual legislators carried that ball over the goal line, just like what happened with the incorporation of Estero. I'm not faulting the legislators for not doing it for us. Maybe it's got something with the way we're doing it, as much hard work is being put in.
No, I know, and you know,
know?
there was confusion last year, Pete, on
With
the
the whole
match, and we
match
had,
thing, right.
absolutely, you know, and here we were spinning our wheels with a lobbyist and a city manager and members up here that, you know, had different takeaways. Well, shame on us, right? Shame on
So
us.
how do we get coordinated?
Exactly.
Through staff or through, I mean, we can't talk to each other.
I know,
Can
but
talk to-
here we are,
Well, let
we
me
can
ask a
talk
question.
now, yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, if three guys go to Tallahassee, they're talking to one another. So can we talk about that with each other?
It's all about what is likely to come back before the council for an official
Well,
action.
we've decided this is our priority. We're not changing. I mean,
And
I
the-
think
and
we
the-
need some advice. Maybe not here right
Well,
now,
and
but we
and
need some
the
advice on that.
legislature's making these decisions, so you're not the body making the decision, but to the extent that you could be talking about matches and
40 to
specific
50.
projects, that's
Well,
where the
well,
crossover.
Let me
and
give you a
sunshine
specific
law.
example. Let's say Greg is the one, or Peter, whomever, he's talking to Mr. XYZ, our state legislative representative, and I say, all right, well, I'm going to go have a chat with him. Any words of wisdom about what you said most recently? I'm just asking, you know, and.
No, but that's specific. Let me look at that.
All right,
That's
I'm
specific
not
facts there.
suggesting
We'll
I should do it, I'm just asking.
Sure.
Because if you have three guys or girl, whatever, going to Tallahassee together, I'm assuming they're talking about that stuff. I mean, and it's already been voted on, but I don't want to it's up to you to tell us.
Right. I would say that having the conversation, open meeting
Of
at the
course,
end,
here,
that's
council
fine.
is fine.
I mean, I'll look at that specific
suggesting-
situation.
But I mean,
But
kind
could we call a special meeting? I know we,
Of course we can call a special.
no,
Sure.
a
sorry.
special meeting, you know, where we just don't make a vote, but just have exchange of information. Because I do think that part of the problem we've had is that there hasn't been a coordination. We need some kind of a structure. And I don't know if the staff could do that, I don't know if it's a,
Well, you
but
might-
if we're,
Oh, you
if we're,
figure it
if
out.
we're doing political action, what one person says definitely should be repeated, but the reaction to what they say should be transmitted, so the next person could either counteract that. So that kind of strategy has to be devised. So how do we do that? What mechanism can we use?
The safest course of action without running the risk of some kind of daisy chaining issue would be to maybe have a workshop with Mrs. Green and come up with a strategy together,
We're
and then
gonna
let
do it
her
soon.
be
All right.
sort of the liaison and say, not with specific conversations that other council members have had, but to say, okay, we've had a couple of follow-up meetings, this is where we seem to need to go. Councilwoman Carr, you're up next. We really need you to hammer on these points that we seem to get traction on that. I think that kind of coordination is probably what you really need.
But to that extent, Derek, if it's not a policy or a funding thing, it shouldn't matter, should it? When you're talking about, in the sunshine, I mean, if it's talking about water, and that's all we're talking about, the only thing that the three of us or the seven of us can't talk about in private is like, are we going to go from 40 to 50? What say you?
Those are the, no, exactly, because I've heard.
But if we're talking
I've heard
like-
the joke, man, we can't talk about the weather because there could be a hurricane someday.
Well,
that kind
and
of
I
thing.
guess that's what it is. I mean, and just us talking, in between that, hey, I'm going to bring up about, I'm asking them, why aren't you carrying this water for us? No pun intended. Why aren't you carrying this bill for us? And then the mayor jumps on and says, why aren't you carrying this for us? That's not thing.
No,
But
I
now,
don't think that's not something coming back to you.
As soon as, Councilman Ford says, hey, 50 would be better, we're all going to vote for that, then, as long as,
No,
I'll step outside, you guys talk amongst
I think
yourselves.
that's a safe space to be in.
Okay.
That distinguishes, if you guys keep that line, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Fred?
Yeah, I want to bring up, first of all, the things that were said, and you can sum it up right here. Depending on who we were with and who was in the up at bat, we reminded them that we were the third hardest hit city last year. Greg brought up a good point that you want to think about this. We've gone through a study. That was the Jim Beaver, the Regional Planning Council study. We also have talked to the people that did the county initial study afterwards, and they all agree that what we're doing is what we need to do. The thing about the match was brought up by Rummel first, not us, and I can't remember how it came up with Dane. Nobody committed we do anything. The only thing I did say to Rodriguez, if it looks like that's going to be a problem, let us know right away, not when it's too late. So that's it. That's and as far as the other strategies, it's whatever you can come up with to kind of persuade them. We told them that we were very disappointed last year, but we understood part of it because of the shooting. But they already have given a whole lot of reasons that this year is going to be just as tough as last year because of Michael, and they're going to have this huge school bill for protection of the students. And they got another, and all this comes out of that grand total revenue. So that's the way it is. And as far as us getting out now, the best thing we could do is anybody that knows anybody, man, any state reps anywhere in the state, talk to them. Call them up if you have to.
Thanks,
You're
Fred.
probably not going to catch them in their office anymore because during the session, they basically live up there all week. If they're lucky, they commute home or they stay on the weekend. So communicating with them is either going to be by phone or you're going to have to go up there. It's that simple.
Right. Thanks,
Now, I
Fred.
think next year, doing another session where everything we learned out of this one, and we talk about it, come up with a strategy. Greg has probably talked to as many of those people, if not more, because he goes up sometimes representing the fire district on other missions. So, and he does a very good job.
Very good. Greg?
Just two little takeaways if we can. I'm going to put a little bit on the staff. If we can get with Carol, two things. One would help everybody here, talking points. So then we can pass those out to everybody. Second part of it is those committees, our budget bills and stuff like that are going to go to committees. List of who's on those committees and their phone numbers. That way, if Amy would like to call
And
the
email
representative-
address, yeah, and email addresses.
Email addresses. If she wants to call and address somebody from Volusia County, she's got the number and the talking points to make that. So kind of like Peter said, now it's a unified 7 people, whether you are on the phone or in person. We've got the same voice, same comments, same wants. And, I think Fred kind of said it the best. Speaker of the House, we're not voting on that guy. It's out of Miami. But we can still get a hold of him and talk to him because he's still going to have a say. If and when it makes it to the budget floor, they're all going to have a say. So if we can get that from Carol, committees, who's on the committees, their phone numbers and emails.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Please.
one last point, I guess, which is, if I'm one of our friends who's a local legislator, does he really want to hear from 7 people? You know, I just talked to Greg yesterday, now you're talking to me. Somehow, that whole thing, unless you feel otherwise.
No, it goes into the orchestration, though, in the plan, like
Right,
we've talked
right,
about.
it's gotta
You
be.
don't want
Yeah.
7, maybe you
Yeah.
want 2.
So,
But somebody's got to be the
orchestrate.
the leader here.
Well, I will tell you this, and I forget what the issue was. I know at one time, Carl took a couple of us around when it was a local issue. We went to the city of Cape Coral and we talked about stuff. I don't remember what that was, Arlene, like a year and a half ago. It was, it was the MPO.
Yeah.
It was the MPO. MPO. Maybe that's what we do. We'll break it up in, let's say there's 4 committees on the House and 4 committees on the Senate side. You know, Councilman Forbes and Councilman Gibson will take 2 of the committees. The deputy mayor and the mayor will take the other 2, and the 3 of us will take the other ones. And you have these 5 guys, these 5 people to call.
And that's a good example. We wouldn't want 7 people talking to the MPO in that
Yeah.
example.
Now, Derek, we could do that in teams, like 2 of us could go up, right? Or would
Well,
that
we
be
do
a
now.
problem?
Yeah, no,
No, I don't think that's a
Okay.
problem.
Because when I went up to Tallahassee, certain people we met with said they only wanted to meet with one of us at a time because they were concerned about the sunshine law.
Well, for the legislature, it doesn't apply to them.
Well, he was
It only
concerned
applies
about
to
us.
you.
He
About
was
us.
a formal, he was a former
Yeah.
city councilman or
Right.
on a district level,
Yeah.
CDD or something like that, so.
But as
he
long
won't
as you
have
follow
this.
those kind of guidelines that Councilman DeWitt pointed out, I think you're fine.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Council, is there anything else for the good of the order? Okay, we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes.
So move.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Caramba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
All right, public comment? I don't think that's, I think we're good now on public comment. Okay, motion to adjourn?
So move.
We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.